Chapter 1935. Although he'd obtained 7 fragments, the jar hadn't fully recovered and was still extremely fragile. It couldn't withstand the successive attacks of a celestial being. It was fine if it was hit once, but if it was hit several times in a row, the jar might be shattered again. Chu Fengmian didn't want to use the jar because of this consideration. But this time, Chu Fengmian was really pushed to the extreme by the Emperor of Waterfront Sea. He had to use the jar to finally find a chance to escape from the sect. However, Chu Fengmian also knew that he was lucky to be able to escape this time. If it wasn't for the carelessness of the Sword Sea Emperor, who didn't realize that Chu Fengmian still had a trump card like the Emperor Jar, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have had a chance to escape. If Chu Fengmian fought with the Emperor of Waterfront Sea again, and the Emperor of Waterfront Sea was on guard, Chu Fengmian would be dead for sure. Though he was cautious by nature, he hadn't expected Chu Fengmian to have the jar of the mortal emperor in his possession. How could such an immortal weapon block his killing blow? Almost no half-step Celestial Realm elite would be able to withstand that fatal sword move. Even if a Celestial Realm elite were to withstand it, they would be either dead or severely injured. Fortunately, the jar had neutralized 99% of the power, saving Chu Fengmian's life. Realm, my realm is too low. I must break through the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu and step into the half-step celestial being realm. Only then will I have the ability to fight a celestial being like the Emperor of Waterfront Sea. Chu Fengmian also deeply understood the terror of a celestial being through this battle. Although he had fought the Emperor of Mad Dragon before, and the Emperor had indeed used all his strength, he wouldn't have wanted to kill Chu Fengmian after all. The power of a celestial being was completely different from that of a celestial being with murderous intent. After this battle, Chu Fengmian finally understood the power of a celestial being. However, the battle between Chu Fengmian and the Emperor of Waterfront Sea showed that Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship, his countless opportunities, and his understanding of Sword Dao were no less than the Emperor of Waterfront Sea. He was even stronger than the Emperor of Waterfront Sea. Right now, his weakest point was his strength. Even if Chu Fengmian's strength was indeed hundreds or thousands of times greater than that of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, and was even more tyrannical than that of a martial artist at the peak of the half-step celestial being realm. But in front of the real celestial realm, it was nothing. Chu Fengmian had a lot of fortuitous encounters. As Chu Fengmian's cultivation level increased, these fortuitous encounters would also show more power. Once Chu Fengmian stepped into the half-step celestial being realm, his strength would soar by more than 10 times. The changes it would bring would be various. At that time, Chu Fengmian's real strength might soar by 100 times. At that time, even if Chu Fengmian wasn't in the celestial realm, he wouldn't be too far away from the celestial realm. At the very least, he wouldn't need to use the Emperor's Jar to fight against the Waterfront Sword Sea Emperor. The disciples of the Sea Sword sect shouldn't be able to find this trench in a short time. I'll stay here and refine the small flying immortal pill first. If Chu Fengmian wanted a breakthrough, the flying immortal pill was a must. Chu Fengmian had bought a lot of sacred herbs from the Moon Ocean Chamber of Commerce. Adding the ones in Shanghai Chang'e's Empty Ring and the ones in the Linlang Dynasty, he could already refine a lot of small flying immortal pills. Taking advantage of the seclusion of the trench, Chu Fengmian could refine all the small flying immortal pills. Chu Fengmian waved his hand. In the trench at the bottom of the seawater suddenly separated. Chu Fengmian condensed a unique space with the power of space. Chu Fengmian stepped into the space. With a thought, the pure young heavenly fire burned and turned into a pill furnace. Now, Chu Fengmian's control of the pure young heavenly fire had reached the point where he could do as he pleased. However, it was Chu Fengmian's first time refining an ancient elixir like the small flying immortal pill. Although it wasn't difficult, Chu Fengmian still had to be careful. Chu Fengmian took out a furnace of sacred herbs and threw them in little by little. Controlling the heat, he slowly began to refine, turning them into medicinal liquid and condensing it bit by bit. Just as the medicinal liquid condensed and was about to form a pill, the pill shape suddenly shattered and the medicinal liquid lost all its power. He failed to condense the pill. Chu Fengmian had refined many pills in his previous life, but this was the first time Chu Fengmian had refined a small flying immortal Dan. Even if it wasn't an ancient sacred elixir, it wasn't easy to refine. After failing once, Chu Fengmian remained expressionless and continued to refine it a second time. This time, the medicinal liquid gradually condensed. Chu Fengmian learned his lesson and carefully refined the pill. Chu Fengmian opened his palm, and the small flying immortal pill fell into his palm. After all, the small flying immortal pill wasn't very difficult to refine. Chu Fengmian succeeded on his second try. Chu Fengmian estimated that the small flying immortal pill should have about 80% medicinal strength. Although it was still acceptable, it was best to refine it to 90% medicinal strength. The small flying immortal pill was related to the success rate of Chu Fengmian's breakthrough. Chu Fengmian could only succeed on his first try to break through to the half-step celestial realm. If he were to fail even once, it would have a huge impact on his future cultivation path. He had to treat it seriously. The third cauldron. Chu Fengmian threw in another batch of sacred elixirs to refine the small flying immortal pill. This time, the small flying immortal pill refined had 90% medicinal strength. After Chu Fengmian gradually became proficient, the small flying immortal pill refined each time had more than 90% medicinal strength. Sometimes, Chu Fengmian could refine 2 small flying immortal pills from a single cauldron of materials. Chu Fengmian was refining cauldron after cauldron of pills. Half a day passed. Chu Fengmian extinguished the cauldron formed by the pure yang skyfire. Chu Fengmian refined a total of 13 cauldrons of small flying immortal pills. Except for the first cauldron that failed, the rest were all successful. As for Chu Fengmian, there were 19 small flying immortal pills in his palm. Chu Fengmian used up all the materials to refine the small flying immortal pills and refine them into 19 pills. A single small flying immortal pill was worth 10 immortal stones. Chu Fengmian should have about 600 immortal stones in total. Adding the small flying immortal pills, it was about 800 immortal stones. He was close to the number of 1,000 immortal stones. As long as he had 1,000 immortal stones, Chu Fengmian would have a chance to break through to the half-step celestial realm. However, it was said that there were only 200 immortal stones left. It was not easy to buy immortal stones now. First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, book Guest House. Chapter 1936. The Ocean Emperor's birthday was approaching. All the immortal stones in the merchant guilds had probably been bought already. 200 immortal stones wasn't a small number. Even if Chu Fengmian went to a few cities and tried his luck, it would be difficult for him to buy 200 immortal stones. Should I go find the Princess of the Sea and the others first? Chu Fengmian thought about what to do next and shook his head. Chu Fengmian was probably wanted by the Oceanic Sword sect now. If he went to the Princess of the Sea and the others, it would only bring them trouble. Besides, Chu Fengmian had to avoid the Oceanic Sword sect. The overlooking Sword Sea Emperor was furious. With his strength, as long as the Oceanic Sword sect disciples found Chu Fengmian, they would rush to kill him. Even if Chu Fengmian kept hiding, he might not be able to escape the pursuit of a sect. If it wasn't for the Ocean Emperor's birthday, I would have bought enough immortal stones hidden somewhere and broken through. I wouldn't be afraid of the overlooking Sword Sea Emperor. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but feel angry, but there was nothing he could do. Because of the Ocean Emperor's birthday, it was almost impossible for Chu Fengmian to break through to the half-step sky realm in a short time. Overlooking the Ocean Emperor's birthday? Overlooking the Ocean Emperor's birthday? Chu Fengmian thought about all these things. Suddenly, an idea popped into his mind. The Ocean Emperor's birthday was in 10 days. Chu Fengmian might as well sneak into the Oceanic Sword sect. One of the reasons Chu Fengmian came to the Songhai Star Zone was to help the Princess of the Sea kill Lan Ming. Lan Ming was an elder of the Oceanic Sword sect. If Chu Fengmian attacked the Oceanic Sword sect as an outsider, he would probably be killed by the Oceanic Sword sect's powerhouses before he could even touch Lan Ming. The Oceanic Sword Sect's strength was far greater than the Oceanic Sword Sect's. They had always been the strongest force in the Songhai Star Zone. Even with Hai Shursi's arrogance, he didn't dare to provoke the Oceanic Sword Sect's disciples. For thousands of years, both the North Sea Palace and the Oceanic Sword Sect positions have been challenged. Only the Oceanic Sword Sect, as the overlord of the Songhai Star Zone, was unshakable. On the surface, the Sea Sacrifice Sect had more than one celestial realm powerhouse. Chu Fengmian knew of the Sea Sacrifice Emperor and the Eastern Forest Ocean Emperor. In fact, in the minds of all the cultivators in the Songhai Star Zone, the number of celestial realm cultivators in the Sea Sacrifice Sect was far more than these two. There were even more celestial realm cultivators who were just hiding. Lan Ming's status in the Sea Sacrifice Sect was extremely high. It wouldn't be easy to kill him. After infiltrating the Sea Sacrifice Sect, Chu Fengmian would be able to find an opportunity to approach Lan Ming. Then, it would be much easier for him to take action. The other reason Chu Fengmian had come to the Sea Sacrifice Sect was to use the glazed clean water to neutralize the primordial blade and the demonic intent in Demon Emperor Blood Demon's heart. The glazed clean water was located in the Sea Sacrifice Sect's sacrificial lake. After infiltrating the Sea Sacrifice Sect, Chu Fengmian could find an opportunity to go to the sacrificial lake to obtain the colored glaze pure water and kill Lan Ming. Moreover, there was another benefit, which was that he could avoid being hunted down by the Sea Sword Sect. No matter how powerful the Sea Sword Sect was, they didn't dare to chase after Chu Fengmian in the Sea Sacrifice Sect. Chu Fengmian was naturally very safe hiding in the Sea Sacrifice Sect. It seems that the Sea Sacrifice Sect will be opening and accepting disciples in the next few days. Chu Fengmian looked through Hai Shursi's memories and suddenly thought of this. The Sea Sacrifice Sect would be opening and accepting disciples in the next few days. The Sea Sacrifice Sect was also taking advantage of the Sea Emperor's birthday to recruit geniuses and experts from the entire Songhai Star Field. The Sea Sacrifice Sect didn't only accept young geniuses. Some experts would also accept disciples. Many experts from the Songhai Star Field, including the 9 Tribulations, Emperor Gu, and even half-step Celestial Realm experts, would join the Sea Sacrifice Sect for the various inheritances and benefits of the Sea Sacrifice Sect. Lan Ming, for example, used to be a member of the Lan family and not a disciple of the Sea Sacrifice Sect. He joined the Sea Sacrifice Sect later and directly became an elder. With the strength of the 9 Tribulations, Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian didn't need to hide. He could directly participate in the recruitment ceremony and join the Sea Sacrifice Sect. Let's go. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian didn't hesitate. He summoned the immemorial centipede and flew toward the Sea Sacrifice Sect. The Sea Sacrifice Sect was the most central sea region of the Songhai continent. It was also where the Sea Sacrifice Sect was located. Since ancient times, the Sea Sacrifice Sect had been the most prosperous sea region of the Songhai Star Field. Countless geniuses had been born there. The Sea Sacrifice Sect also monopolized the Sea Sacrifice Sect, winning over countless geniuses and experts to maintain its position as the overlord. The immemorial centipede was extremely fast. Chu Fengmian soon arrived at the Sea Sacrifice Sect. At the same time, Chu Fengmian also changed his appearance. After all, Chu Fengmian didn't want to be discovered by the Sea Sword Sect. Of course, other than his appearance, what he really needed to change was his aura. Whether it was Chu Fengmian's sword intent, ancestor Tianlong's bloodline, or heaven-devouring beast bloodline, Chu Fengmian had exposed them in the battle with the Sea Emperor of Waterfront Sword. At this time, if a dragon race expert suddenly appeared in the Songhai Star Field, the Sea Sword Sect would very likely suspect him. Therefore, Chu Fengmian couldn't disguise himself as a dragon. However, Chu Fengmian changed his aura into a bloodline that didn't belong to the dragon race, but had great dragon might. The Dragon Whale bloodline. The Dragon Whale was also one of the major clans of the sea beasts. It was said that they inherited the bloodlines of the ancient war dragon and the ancient origin whale. Because the Dragon Whale clan had the dragon bloodline, they also knew how to use the martial skills of the dragon race. Chu Fengmian disguised himself as a dragon whale and used the martial skills of the dragon race, so no one would suspect him. As for the power of the primordial Yuan whale race, Chu Fengmian had killed a lot of primordial Yuan whales in the chaotic ocean. Their essence blood had fused with Chu Fengmian's dragon race bloodline and manifested the dragon whale race's bloodline. If Chu Fengmian wanted to sneak into the sea sacrifice sect, he would certainly be heavily investigated by the sect. Therefore, even if it was a disguise, Chu Fengmian had to do it perfectly. Now that Chu Fengmian had the true dragon whale bloodline, even Celestial Realm experts wouldn't be able to see any problems with it. Chu Fengmian had transformed into an expert of the dragon whale clan and went directly to a city in the Sacrificial Sea, the Sacrificial Sea City. This was the biggest city in the Sacrificial Sea. The Sea Sacrifice sect's disciple recruitment ceremony was also held in this city. Chu Fengmian rode the immemorial centipede all the way to the Sacrificial Sea City. The Sacrificial Sea City was much bigger than the Silent Sea City and Jinan City that Chu Fengmian had been to. It was almost as big as a continent. Jinan City was considered a big city in the Songhai Star Field, but compared to the Sacrificial Sea City, it was nothing. Although it wasn't a remote village, it was only 1% as prosperous as the Sacrificial Sea City. In a chapter. Chapter 1937. The Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City was the largest city in the vast oceanic Laughter Star region. The Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City was very unique. It didn't have any restrictions or array formations. It was like an empty city. The city didn't have any defensive restrictions or array formations. There was only a small array formation that prevented seawater from entering the city. The martial artists and fey gods that came to the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City didn't just come from the vast oceanic star region. Many of them came from other distant star regions. The arrival of so many powerhouses should have brought about some kind of chaos. Without the restriction of any restrictions or array formations, the lonely oceanic star region should have been extremely chaotic. However, when Chu Fengmian arrived, he found that although the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City was bustling with people and carriages, every martial artist was extremely well behaved. There was no sound of quarreling. This was an almost impossible scene in any other city. However, it was happening in the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City. This was because the Sea Sacrificial sect was behind the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City. No one dared to challenge the Sea Sacrificial sect's prestige. There was no defensive restriction or array formation in the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City because the Sea Sacrificial sect was absolutely confident. The Sea Sacrificial sect was confident that no one would dare to attack the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City. Although the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City didn't have any restrictions or array formations, it was more well-behaved and safer than any other city in the vast oceanic star region. No one dared to fight or challenge the Sea Sacrificial sect prestige. The Sea Sacrificial sect's strength is really terrifying. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but notice that even some Emperor Gu and half-step celestial being powerhouses restrained their arrogance when they entered the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City. They were well-behaved and didn't dare to overstep their boundaries. Looking at the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City, one could see exactly how tyrannical the Sea Sacrificial sect was to be able to make so many powerhouses abide by the sect's rules. Chu Fengmian glanced at the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City and flew directly into the city without going through the city gates. In the vast oceanic star region, strength reigned supreme. Given Chu Fengmian's 9 tribulations Emperor Gu's realm, he could naturally bypass many rules and fly directly into the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City. Of course, this was also because there was only one rule in the Sacrificial Heavenly Sea City. No fighting was allowed inside. Even if Chu Fengmian directly flew into the city, it wouldn't be considered a violation of the rules. Of course, the martial artists and demon immortals who dared to fly directly into the Sacrificial Heaven Sea City were all famous experts. Flying over their heads was a form of provocation. If it were some weaklings, they would have dared to do such a thing. It was true that no one dared to make a move within the Heaven Tribute Sea City. However, once they left the Heaven Tribute Sea City, there would naturally be people who would step in to teach them a lesson. In fact, they might even bring about a calamity upon themselves. Therefore, most of the martial artists and demon immortals entered the city through the city gate in a well-behaved manner. Only some powerful emperor of the 9 tribulations and half-step celestial being experts dared to fly directly into the city. Although Chu Fengyan was the 9 tribulations emperor, the primordial centipede beneath him was a half-celestial realm wild beast that exuded an incomparably terrifying aura. The immemorial centipede originally possessed the bloodline of a desolate beast. It was much stronger than ordinary demonic beasts of the same level. Later, with the help of Chu Fengyan's blood of the heaven-devouring beast, the primordial centipede's ancient bloodline was awakened, making its strength even more powerful. Even some half-step celestial being experts who sensed the primordial centipede's aura turned extremely solemn. They were extremely fearful. Primordial centipede, so powerful. A half-step celestial being primordial centipede. This person can actually tame such a terrifying wild beast and make it his mount? Judging from his aura, he is from the Dragon Whale clan. He is an expert of the Dragon Whale clan. I wonder if this person is here to celebrate the Sea Emperor's birthday or to join the Sea Sacrificial sect. If this person is here to join the Sea Sacrificial sect, I'm afraid he will at least be a deacon or even a guardian. This person is a formidable opponent. We must be careful. Seeing Chu Fengyan's arrival, many experts in the Sacrificial Heaven Sea City began to discuss animatedly. There were even a few people who had their eyes on Chu Fengyan. The Sea Sacrificial sect's disciple recruitment ceremony was actually a competition. The stronger one's strength and aptitude, the higher their status in the Sea Sacrificial sect would be. Some young disciples, even if their strength was lacking, but their aptitude was amazing. They could directly become inner disciples or even sea disciples. As for Chu Fengyan, who was an expert himself, he naturally would not become a disciple. Instead, he could directly become a deacon or guardian of the Sea Sacrificial sect. His status was extremely high. The core disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect were also qualified to compete for the position of sect master. Therefore, they were naturally geniuses who had been nurtured since young. Chu Fengyan, who joined the Sea Sacrificial sect later, could only become an elder. However, the status of an elder of the Sea Sacrificial sect was extremely noble. It was much higher than the sect masters of some second-rate forces in the vast sea star zone. Even if they went to other star zones, they would still be respected. Therefore, some half-step celestial being experts, who were like ancestors, were willing to join the Sea Sacrificial sect and assume the position of an elder. In the Sacrificial Heaven Sea City, many 9 tribulations emperor and even some half-step celestial being experts had come to join the Sea Sacrificial sect this time. Chu Fengyan's appearance was naturally seen as a strong opponent by them. However, Chu Fengyan did this on purpose. He also wanted to make a name for himself. When he joined the Sea Sacrificial sect in the future, his status would be higher and it would be more convenient for him to do things. Although there were no restrictions or formations in the Sacrificial Heaven Sea City, every move inside could not escape the eyes of the experts of the Sea Sacrificial sect. Chu Fengyan's arrival with the immemorial centipede was already enough to attract the attention of the experts of the Sea Sacrificial sect. Of course, Chu Fengyan attracted some attention at most. It was not that surprising. There were many experts coming to the Sacrificial Heaven Sea City at all times. Many of the mounts of some half-step celestial being experts were not inferior to the immemorial centipede. In a short time, Chu Fengyan saw experts riding Yuan Whale and even Tian Long come to the Sacrificial Heaven Sea City. Every time the Sea Sacrificial sect opened and accepted disciples, there would be half-step celestial being experts participating. Compared to them, Chu Fengyan did not attract much attention. When he arrived at the Sacrificial Heaven Sea City, Chu Fengyan put the immemorial centipede into the Realm King's cloth pouch. Many martial artists and demon immortals in the Sacrificial Heaven Sea City were not surprised to see this. 1,000-foot Sumeru space was indeed rare and difficult to find in third-class continents like the Azure Dragon Star Zone and the Yenluo Star Zone. But in the vast sea-star zone, if a half-step celestial being expert wanted to get it, they could get it without too much effort. Chu Fengyan put away the immemorial centipede and came to the sacrificial Heaven Sea City. The prosperity of the sacrificial Heaven Sea City also opened Chu Fengyan's eyes. End of chapter. Chapter 1938. Chu Fengyan stepped into Sacrifice Heaven Sea City and felt the prosperity of the city with countless tall buildings. Many of the world's 10,000 races could be seen in Sacrifice Heaven Sea City. Chu Fengyan could see many of the extinct races recorded in the ancient books of the 9 territories at a glance. At a glance, Chu Fengyan could see countless tyrannical auras. Emperor realm masters were the overlords of some low-level continents, like the ancient monster continent. But now, even though there weren't many Emperor realm masters in Sacrificial Heaven Sea City, Chu Fengyan could see quite a few of them at a glance. There were also many cultivators and monster gods at the Emperor Gu realm. Chu Fengyan even saw a lot of 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu, and half-step Heaven Realm Masters. Sacrificial Heaven Sea City was the largest city in the Songhai Starfield. It was incomparably prosperous and had stood tall in the Songhai Starfield for tens of thousands of years. It had always been the largest city in the Songhai Starfield. Its heritage was extremely deep, and there were as many masters as there were clouds. These days, the Sea Sacrifice Sect's disciple recruitment ceremony attracted a large number of talented cultivators to gather in Sacrifice Heaven Sea City. Many geniuses from other star fields had arrived at the Heaven Worship City. Coupled with the celebration of the Ocean Emperor's birthday, these two events made the Heaven Worship Sea City more lively than ever. The Sea Sacrifice Sect's disciple recruitment ceremony ends today. Let's go sign up quickly. Chu Fengyan was strolling in Sacrifice Heaven Sea City when he suddenly heard some Sea Clan cultivators around him hurriedly walking towards the center of Lonely Sea City. It's the last day? The Sea Sacrifice Sect's disciple recruitment ceremony lasted 8 days. The first 7 days were for registration, and the last day was for the assessment. So, today was the 7th day. We almost missed it. Chu Fengyan heard the words of these Sea Clan cultivators and walked towards the center of Sacrifice Heaven Sea City. At the center of the Heaven Worship Sea City, there was a huge palace. It was 100,000 feet wide, and there were millions of martial artists from different clans in it. These people were all cultivators from various races who had come to sign up for the Sea Sacrifice Sect's disciple recruitment ceremony. Every time the Sea Sacrifice Sect's apprentice recruitment ceremony was held, there were tens of millions of martial artists who came to register. There were even a few times when there were hundreds of millions of martial artists. The number of martial artists and demonic immortals in the Songhai Star Zone alone was more than 100 billion. In addition to the other star zones near the Songhai Star Zone, there were more than 1 trillion martial artists and demonic immortals in the countless continents. The number of geniuses that were born was also an astronomical figure. However, each year, the Seashore Sect would only accept about 10,000 disciples. Of course, only those with a 1 in 10,000 chance would qualify to enter. It was extremely difficult to join the Sea Sacrifice Sect. The martial artists and Yao immortals who dared to participate in the Sea Sacrifice Sect's disciple recruitment ceremony were either famous powerhouses or peerless geniuses from other places. Ordinary martial artists and Fey gods didn't even have the qualifications to participate in the Sea Sacrifice Sect's test. Martial artists and Fey immortals who could pass the test and join the Sea Sacrifice Sect were almost all geniuses among geniuses. Senior, are you also here to participate in my Sea Sacrifice Sect's test? Chu Fengyan had just entered the palace when a disciple from the Sea Sacrifice Sect suddenly came over. He was only an outer disciple, but his cultivation was at the 6th Tribulation True Emperor level. He was only 1 step away from becoming Emperor Gu. Outer disciples, inner disciples, seed disciples, core disciples, and even worse than outer disciples were the errand boys. The Sea Sacrifice Sect's disciples were divided into these 5 categories. Outer disciples were only slightly better than errand boys in a sect like this. They couldn't obtain the complete inheritance of the sea sacrifice sect. However, this insignificant outer disciple had the power of a sixth tribulation true emperor. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. How strong would the inner court disciples, seed disciples, and even core disciples of the Oceanrite sect be? In Chu Fengmian's Sword Dao Gate, a sixth tribulation true emperor was at least an elder. But here, he was only an outer disciple. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh at the disparity in power. However, the Sea Sacrifice sect was still a power with tens of thousands of years of history. It was normal for it to have such a foundation. In the future, Chu Fengmian's Sword Dao Gate would only grow stronger. My name is Huai Run, an outer disciple of the Sea Sacrifice sect. The outer disciple came over and introduced himself. Correct. I'm here to participate in the Sea Sacrifice sect test. May I know where to register? As Chu Fengmian spoke, he calmly took out a few divine-grade spirit stones and handed them to the outer sect disciple of the Sea Sacrifice sect called Huairen. These are divine spirit stones? Huairen took the spirit stone and felt the pure spiritual energy within. Her expression changed, and she became excited. Given his status, he was not qualified to obtain a divine-grade spirit stone. These divine-grade spirit stones were a huge fortune to him. Senior, please come this way. This is a special place for the seniors. With your status, you will definitely become a deacon once you join the Sea Sacrifice sect. Huairen took the stones and became even more respectful towards Chu Fengmian. He did not care about the other candidates. However, Chu Fengmian was a peak 9 tribulation ancient emperor realm expert. He was obviously an expert who had made a name for himself a long time ago. Such an expert would have a high status in the Sea Sacrifice sect. An outer disciple like him naturally didn't dare to offend him. This was especially true since Chu Fengmian was so generous. He answered all of Chu Fengmian's questions. It seems that there are more people participating in the apprenticeship ceremony this time. Chu Fengmian casually asked while following Huairen deeper into the palace. That's right. The number of warriors, Fey immortals, and seniors who have come to register for the disciple recruitment this time is much more than in previous years. Huairen nodded. In a few days, it will be the birthday of our Sea Sacrifice sect's ancestor, the Sea Sacrifice Emperor. During his birthday, he will also come to select disciples. Many people are here to take him as their master. The Sea Sacrifice Emperor was the oldest expert in the Songhai star field. His name wasn't only in the Songhai star field, but also in the countless star field around it. Not only was he powerful, but his ability to train disciples was also terrifying. He had personally trained the Donglin Emperor. Many people wanted to become his disciple in order to attain the Celestial Tao and become the second Donglin Emperor. First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second, book Guesthouse mobile version website. Chapter 1939. However, Chu Fengmian didn't really care. How could it be possible to pass the Deva Tribulation and step into the celestial realm just by being an apprentice? To pass the Deva Tribulation and ascend to immortality, the most important thing was still oneself. Whether it was apprenticeship or opportunity, they were all external things that could be used as an aid, but not as the foundation. The Donglin Ocean Emperor could pass the Deva Tribulation and become the Ocean Emperor because he had the aptitude to become an immortal. Being an apprentice to the Ocean Emperor could only be regarded as an opportunity for the Donglin Ocean Emperor. It was not the foundation for him to become the Ocean Emperor of a generation. Even if the half-step celestial realm warriors in the world were given enough opportunities to be apprenticed to the Ocean Emperor, less than 1 in 10 could pass the Deva Tribulation. The rest did not have the aptitude to become an immortal at all. Of course, this was under the condition that there were enough resources. In fact, even if there were 100 half-step celestial realm warriors, there might not be one who could pass the Deva Tribulation and reach the celestial realm. The vast Sea Star region was a second-class continent, but there were very few celestial realm warriors. Chu Fengmian followed Huairen and gradually entered the depths of the palace. The depths of the palace were much quieter than the outside, and there was a square. At a glance, Chu Fengmian could see that the square was a kind of spiritual weapon that was refined by a special method. It could withstand the bombardment of a half-step celestial realm warrior. It seems that this is the place where the experts are tested. Chu Fengyan thought to himself. Generally speaking, the warriors and demon immortals who participated in the sea sacrifice sex assessment were divided into one category. Those below the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu would take the ordinary assessment. The martial artists and demonic immortals above the 9 tribulations ancient emperor realm were all experts who had been famous for a long time. Their strength was not inferior to the intersect disciples and seed disciples of the sea sacrificial sect. Therefore, they would not be tested together with others, but would be tested individually. This square was the place where the experts were tested, and the elders of the sea sacrifice sect would personally take the assessment. Chu Fengyan glanced over and saw that there were thousands of people standing in the square, much fewer than the people outside. However, these thousands of people were all martial artists and demon immortals above the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Of course, most of them were 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. There were not many half-step celestial realm experts. Experts who had stepped into the half-step celestial being realm were almost all patriarchs of the sect, figures who had lived for tens of thousands of years. Those who were really willing to join and serve the sea sacrifice sect were still in the minority. However, among these several thousand people, there were at least 30 to 40 half-step celestial tier powerhouses. If they were to be taken out, it would be enough to sweep through one stellar region after another. Even a tenth of the powerhouses gathered in the square would be enough to easily sweep through the Daluo star field. These are the experts of the Shanghai star zone. The phrase, experts are as numerous as the clouds, perfectly matched Chu Fengyan's thoughts, especially the Shanghai star field, which was only a second-class continent. It was said that the 3 sacred realms were hundreds of times more powerful than a second-class continent like the Shanghai starfield. Chu Fengyan couldn't even begin to imagine how terrifying the 3 great sacred realms were. While Chu Fengyan was deep in thought, numerous gazes were already looking in his direction. There were many 9 tribulations, Emperor Gu, and half-step celestial being realm martial artists and demon gods standing in the square. Their gazes were all sizing up Chu Fengyan. Another one, he looks unfamiliar. He doesn't seem to be someone from the Shanghai star zone. He's from the Dragon Whale clan. Oh, that's him. Is that the Dragon Whale Emperor Gu who controls the ancient centipede? It's said that the ancient centipede is a half-step celestial being realm wild beast. I wonder if that ancient centipede was tamed by him. If it was, then his strength is simply unfathomable. It shouldn't be. The ancient centipede has the bloodline of a wild beast and is more powerful than martial artists and demon gods of the same realm. This person is only Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations. How could he tame it? I'm afraid that someone subdued the ancient centipede and gave it to him. Then this person's origin is very deep. Hearing these discussions, Chu Fengyan smiled. It seemed that the news of him controlling the ancient centipede to the sacrificial heavenly sea city had indeed spread among the crowd. After all, the ancient centipede that Chu Fengyan controlled was a half-step celestial being realm wild beast. This was enough to attract attention. In addition, the bloodline of the dragon whale was extremely rare, and its personality was even more solitary. It was very rare to see it. Therefore, Chu Fengyan had inexplicably gained the title of Dragon Whale Emperor Gu. Huairen brought Chu Fengyan to the square and left. The assessment here was not something that an outer disciple like him could participate in. Chu Fengyan also stepped into the square and walked to a place where there was no one. He stood quietly and waited. Not long after, even more martial artists and demon immortals arrived. Half a day had passed. The gate to the palace in the square closed with a bang. Chu Fengyan knew that the registration was over. Next was the assessment of the sea sacrificial sect. Rumble. Suddenly, another ancient stone gate outside the palace in the square opened. Dozens of figures walked out. These figures were all disciples of the sea sacrificial sect. Each of them had the strength of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. These people are the seed disciples of the sea sacrificial sect. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he looked at these figures. These people were all 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, but they were much stronger than the ordinary Emperor Gu. Of course, they were not as strong as Hai Shirsi, but they were comparable to the 14 demon sovereigns that Chu Fengmian had killed in the Linlang dynasty. With such strength, they could be core disciples in the Sea Sword sect, but in the Sea Sacrificial sect, they were only Sea disciples. It seems that the weakest core disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect are at least as strong as Hai Shirsi and Hai 17. Chu Fengmian glanced at them and muttered to himself. He was also observing the strength of the Sea Sacrificial sect. The disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect walked toward each person in the square and distributed a jade talisman. Chu Fengmian took a jade talisman and found that there was a number engraved on it. Chu Fengmian's number was exactly 4,300. After the jade talismans were distributed, the disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect left the square and walked to the side. They stood in a row and sized up Chu Fengmian and the others again. Occasionally, there would be a few conversations. There are quite a lot of people here this time. I don't see any monstrous characters. Humph, I think the strength of these 9 tribulations Emperor Gu is not as good as ours. A bunch of mediocre people want to sneak into our Sea Sacrificial sect? These Sea disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect didn't hide anything when they talked. First, they set a small goal. For example, 1 second, book Guesthouse mobile version website. Chapter 1940. The martial artists and Yao gods on the square could clearly hear the conversation between the disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect. Many people had angry looks on their faces. The martial artists and Yao gods on the square had been famous for a long time. When had they ever been humiliated and looked down upon like this? Chu Fengmian frowned, feeling a little unhappy. The conversation between the disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect was indeed too arrogant. They simply did not put anyone in their eyes. However, the Sea Sacrificial sect was the largest sect in the Songhai Star Zone. It was said that they had the inheritance of the ancient sea god. The disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect were all invincible in the same realm. Many of them were extremely disdainful of the martial artists and Yao gods outside. Although many of the martial artists and Yao gods on the square looked angry, no one made a move at this time. They just snorted a few times. After all, they were all here to participate in the disciple recruitment ceremony of the Sea Sacrificial sect. At this time, they did not want to start conflict. Boom! After the disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect had all taken their positions, a powerful aura suddenly descended. Then, a middle-aged man appeared. This middle-aged man exuded an extremely terrifying aura. Some of the weaker 9 tribulations Emperor Gu could not bear this middle-aged man's aura. This middle-aged man was a half-step celestial realm expert. However, he was much stronger than the ordinary half-step celestial realm experts. He was much stronger than Linlang Jia, who Chu Fengmian had once killed. He was only 1 step away from the peak of the half-step celestial realm. Is this the sacred peace Sea King of the Sea Sacrificial sect? Chu Fengmian glanced at the middle-aged man. Through Hai Shirsi's memory, he knew the middle-aged man's identity like the back of his hand. The sacred peace Sea King was one of the elders of the Sea Sacrificial sect. He usually cultivated in seclusion. His strength was only average among the elders of the Sea Sacrificial sect, but he was still much stronger than the half-step celestial realm experts outside. In terms of aura, none of the dozens of half-step celestial realm martial artists and Yao gods on the square was a match for the sacred PC King. Although aura did not represent one's strength, the sacred PC King's aura was so powerful that his strength was naturally not weak. It seemed like the sacred transcendent Ocean King would be the host of the apprenticeship ceremony. To preside over the disciple recruitment ceremony, one must have the ability to suppress all the martial artists and Yao immortals present. The fact that the Pingxing Ocean King was sent to preside over the disciple recruitment ceremony meant that he had absolute strength. I will be in charge of the assessment this time. The sacred Tranquil King descended and sat on the highest throne. He scanned the warriors and demon immortals on the square. Under his gaze, Chu Fengmian felt as if someone was spying on him. The sacred Pacific Ocean King seemed to have had a fortuitous encounter. His gaze could see through the strength and trump cards of others. None of the fortuitous encounters he had encountered in the past could escape his eyes. It was easy to fake one's identity, but one's strength, trump cards, and fortuitous encounters could not be faked. The Seashore sect had put the sacred Pingxing Sea King in charge of the test because they wanted him to check if there was anyone who wanted to fish in troubled waters. The three of you? The sacred Tranquil Ocean King's gaze swept across the square, then suddenly fixed on three people on the square. The moment the sacred Tranquil Ocean King's gaze locked on them, their expressions changed abruptly. They hurriedly channeled their spiritual energy and fled out of the palace. Chu Fengmian sensed traces of demonic intent in their spiritual energy. Demons? Chu Fengmian didn't notice that there were demons among the martial artists and demon immortals on the square. Demons were the enemies of all races in the world. Not only humans, but also the oceanic tribes and countless other races had a blood feud with them. This feud would not end until one of them was dead. For example, the Six Paths demonic sects could only be considered as demonic sects. However, the pure demonic race was the enemy of all races. These three demons must have some ulterior motive for sneaking into the Seashore sect. Attack. The sacred Tranquil Ocean King didn't attack the three fleeing demon sovereigns. Instead, he shouted softly. A disciple of the Seashore sect, standing to the side, suddenly rushed toward the three demons. He unsheathed his trident, and with a flash of light, the three demons were pierced through and killed on the spot. These three demons were Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations, and were of the same realm as the Seashore sect disciple. However, they were mercilessly killed by a single move from the Seashore sect disciple. This Seashore sect disciple could kill martial artists and demon immortals of the same realm with a single move. Killed with a single move? That's Song Lang? It's said that he's one of the best among the seed disciples of the Seashore sect. His realm isn't high enough to be promoted to a core disciple, but his strength isn't below that of a core disciple. Amazing! Many martial artists and demon immortals on the square were shocked by Song Lang's strength. Even the martial artists and demon immortals of the half-step celestial realm were wary of Song Lang. His strength was enough to injure a half-step celestial realm martial artist. Our Seashore sect is open to accept disciples. Everyone can come. However, if any of you are a spy, don't blame me for being merciless. The sacred Tranquil Ocean King shouted coldly. Immediately, many people on the square were shocked. Soon, a few more people were caught by the sacred Tranquil Ocean King. These people all came from a force in the Songhai Star Zone, the Nighthawk sect. The Nighthawk sect was later destroyed by the Oceanic Sacrifice sect. These people all wanted to sneak into the Oceanic Sacrifice sect to cause trouble and take revenge. However, they were all caught by the sacred Tranquil Ocean King. Under Song Lang's attack, these people were mercilessly killed at the same time. When it was Chu Fengmian's turn, he hid his aura, just like the real Emperor Gu of the Dragon Whale clan. After all, Chu Fengmian had the bloodline of the Dragon Whale clan. Chu Fengmian only needed to hide his strength and show the bloodline of the Dragon Whale clan. The sacred Tranquil Ocean King could not detect Chu Fengmian's hidden strength. After confirming that Chu Fengmian had the bloodline of the Dragon Whale clan, he did not continue to investigate Chu Fengmian. It was easy for Chu Fengmian to fool him. After an hour, the sacred Tranquil Ocean King's investigation was completed. There were more than 100 people, all of whom had ulterior motives, concealed their identities, or were enemies of the Seashore sect. They wanted to sneak into the Seashore sect. Without exception, these people were mercilessly killed by Song Lang. Even a half-step celestial realm demon immortal was killed by Song Lang in 10 moves. Song Lang's strength was stronger than Hai Shirsi's. Although he was not as strong as Hai Chang'e, he was strong enough to kill a half-step celestial realm demon immortal. In a chapter 1941, the investigation of the Sea Sacrifice sect was extremely strict. Anyone who tried to conceal their identity would be killed on the spot as a precaution. After killing hundreds of experts who were above Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations, The other martial artists and Yao gods on the square felt a chill run down their spines, especially when they looked at Song Lang. Many of them were filled with deep fear. These people had all been killed by Song Lang. Even though several Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations had attacked them together, they were still easily killed by Song Lang. The Pingxing Sea King did not even make a move. Song Lang, a sea disciple, had killed all of them. This was also a display of power to prove the strength of the sea sacrifice sect, and to make the martial artists and Yao gods on the scene calm down. Many of the martial artists and Yao gods present have been famous for a long time. Many of them were the ancestors of various sections. Naturally, they were arrogant and domineering in their daily lives. But now, seeing Song Lang, a mere disciple, had such strength, the martial artists and Yao gods on the scene all calmed down and understood the strength of the sea sacrifice sect. I've already investigated everyone's identities. All of you are innocent. Those who try to fish in troubled waters have already been eliminated. The Pingxing Sea King said calmly after checking everyone. Next is the examination. Everyone should be clear about the rules of the sea sacrifice sect, so I will not repeat them one by one. The sea sacrifice sect's disciple recruitment ceremony would be held every once in a while. Anyone who paid a little attention could understand the rules of the ceremony. No one made a sound and continued to wait for the Pingxing Sea King's words. But this time, the rules are a little different. Anyone who comes up to the stage and defeats 3 disciples of the sea sacrifice sect in a row will pass the examination. The Pingxing Sea King said, "Of course, after winning 3 battles in a row, you can continue to fight. The more disciples you defeat, the better your performance, and the higher your position in the sea sacrifice sect will be. You can even become an elder in 1 step and sit on the same level as me." Many martial artists and Yao gods' eyes lit up when they heard this. But most people's expressions did not change much. It was easy for the Pingxing Sea King to say this, but in the history of the sea sacrifice sect, there were very few people who could become elders of the sea sacrifice sect. It was easier said than done to reach the top in a single bound. Even defeating 3 disciples and passing the examination was extremely difficult. The strength of these sea disciples could be said to be the strongest among the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Although it was impossible for all of them to have the ability to kill a half-step celestial being like Blue Wave, it was not impossible for them to be on an equal footing with a half-step celestial being. Defeating 3 people in a row was already extremely difficult. Over the years, when martial artists and demon immortals above the level of a 9 tribulation ancient emperor went to participate in the sea sacrifice sect's test, the elimination rate was not as terrifying as the outside world. However, in reality, not even 1 out of 10 people could enter. Chu Fengmian remembered that according to Hai Shirsi's memories, one only needed to defeat 2 disciples of the sea sacrifice sect to pass the test. There was not much time to take a breather in 3 consecutive battles. If one was injured in the previous battle, they would be at a great disadvantage in the next battle. Many martial artists and Yao gods were aware of the change of the rules. They could not help but frown. It would be many times more difficult to defeat 1 more sea sacrifice sect disciple. But the rules of the sea sacrifice sect were naturally set by the sea sacrifice sect. Now, they could only abide by the rules. After all, the sea sacrifice sect's overbearingness had been reflected to the extreme from the beginning of the examination. If they did not abide by the rules, only death would await them. Those whose numbers are called will automatically come to the stage. The sacred tranquil Sea King waved his hand, and the square spun. Suddenly, an arena appeared. The square itself was a spiritual weapon. The Pingxing Sea King could control the square to make changes. The martial artists and Yao gods standing in the square were forced to retreat to the bottom of the arena by a force. At the same time, the jade talisman in the hand of a young martial artist suddenly lit up. The jade talisman represented each person's number. The person whose number was called first would come to the stage to challenge. This young martial artist was a human. Although the Sea clan was revered in the Songhai Star Zone, humans were not common. However, although he was a human, This young martial artist had some Sea clan blood in him. The martial techniques he used were of the Sea clan. This is young Master Hong Hai. Chu Fengyan saw the young martial artist come to the stage. He searched Hai Shixi's memory and quickly recognized the young martial artist's identity. This young martial artist was called young Master Hong Hai. He was the young master of the Hong Hai sect, a small force in the Songhai Star Zone. Later, when the Hong Hai sect was destroyed by the glittering Jewel Dynasty, he was the only one who escaped from the sect. He worked hard and cultivated diligently. Chu Fengyan saw young Master Hong Hai come to the stage and shook his head. Young Master Hong Hai had no chance of passing the test. Although young Master Hong Hai had some fortuitous encounters, it was impossible for him to win all 3 matches in a row. It was unknown whether he could even defeat a disciple of the Sea sacrificial sect. Chu Fengyan's gaze fell on the stage. Young Master Hong Hai went to the stage and chose the weakest disciple of the Sea sacrificial sect as his opponent. The opponents for the 3 consecutive battles were chosen by the participants on the stage. However, it did not mean that only the weaklings were chosen based on their auras. The strength of one's aura did not represent one's true strength. It was also possible that some disciples of the Sea sacrificial sect would deliberately hide their auras and pretend to be weak. The disciple of the Sea sacrificial sect who was chosen by young Master Hong Hai went to the stage. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he immediately attacked. This disciple of the Sea sacrificial sect showed no mercy. He attacked with a killing move and gained the upper hand in an instant. After 10 rounds, young Master Hong Hai was easily defeated and thrown off the stage. Young Master Hong Hai was defeated in an extremely embarrassing manner. He was far from being a match for this disciple of the Sea sacrificial sect. Young Master Hong Hai can't even defeat one of them. The martial artists and Yao gods around the stage discussed animatedly when they saw young Master Hong Hai being thrown off the stage. Young Master Hong Hai was considered a martial artist with some fame. Now that he was on the stage, he could not even defeat a disciple of the Sea Sword sect. This was indeed beyond their expectations. Although they had heard about the difficulty of the Sea sacrificial sect's test, they had only seen it with their own eyes now. He had to win 3 consecutive battles to be considered a success. However, it seemed that defeating even one of them was extremely difficult. In a chapter 1942. Next, seeing this scene, the sacred tranquil king said expressionlessly. The jade talisman in the hand of another warrior lit up. This warrior's strength was even stronger than that of young Master Hong Hai. He went up to the stage and fought hundreds of rounds with a disciple of the Sea sacrifice sect, but he was still one move behind and lost. Several more people were called up to the stage in succession. However, almost without exception, none of them were able to defeat a single disciple of the Sea sacrifice sect before they were defeated. Only a Sea clan demon god defeated a disciple of the Sea sacrifice sect. However, it was a Pyrrhic victory, and he had exhausted a great deal of strength. In the next battle, he was already in a very difficult situation. He was defeated within a few moves. Defeating a disciple of the Sea sacrifice sect was extremely difficult for Emperor Gu of the 9 Tribulations. Moreover, even if he defeated one disciple, he would have to face a second one. There was almost no time to rest. If he continued to fight, it was almost impossible for him to pass the assessment, unless his strength was far superior to the disciples of the Sea sacrifice sect. Chu Fengyan watched this scene quietly, but in his mind, he was studying the sword principle totem. The sword principle totem of the Sea sacrifice sect was ranked 2nd in the sword principle totem. It contained all kinds of mysteries that were not inferior to the 3 sword principle totems in Chu Fengyan's hands. Chu Fengyan had never heard of the innumerable ancient swordsmanship recorded in it. Many of these ancient swordsmanship were extremely powerful, but because it was too complicated to perform, they were forgotten by later generations, and their inheritance was cut off. However, for Chu Fengyan, even if it was an extremely difficult swordsmanship to perform, he could see through its origin at a glance. Many of these swordsmanships had some strengths, but because they had too many flaws, they had been lost since ancient times. Chu Fengmian's 9-region swordsmanship was a new swordsmanship created by taking the strengths of thousands of swordsmanships. Chu Fengmian extracted the essence of each swordsmanship and integrated it into the 9-region swordsmanship. New pages were constantly condensing on the ancient swordsmanship book of the 9-region swordsmanship. As more and more chapters were condensed, Chu Fengmian's power was also increasing. However, Chu Fengmian's appearance was still calmly watching the match. His aura didn't fluctuate in the slightest, so no one could see the changes in his body. While Chu Fengmian was comprehending the sword Dao totem, he was also occasionally looking at what was happening in the arena. Not long after, there was a sudden commotion. Someone passed the test. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw a half-step celestial realm demon immortal in the arena. Chu Fengmian recognized him as the demon immortal of the Sea Wolf clan, Qin Lang. He was also a famous expert. Qin Lang was one of the geniuses of the Hailang clan. He had stepped into the half-step celestial realm at a young age. It was said that his future achievements were very likely to break through to the celestial realm. The reason why Qin Lang wanted to join the Sea Sacrificial sect was probably because of the Sea Sacrificial monarch. He wanted to be valued by the Sea Sacrificial monarch and be accepted as a disciple. Qin Lang was a half-step celestial realm demon immortal. It was easy for him to fight against 3 9 tribulations Emperor Gu's seed disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect. It didn't take much effort for Qin Lang to pass the test. He was taken away and officially joined the Sea Sacrificial sect. The test was extremely difficult for Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations. But it wasn't difficult for half-step celestial realm warriors. As long as they didn't take the initiative to choose someone like the Sea Sacrificial monarch as their opponent, they could almost pass the test. The next few half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon gods, without exception, all passed the assessment easily and joined the Sea Sacrifice sect. Of course, it wasn't that no one among the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had passed the test. At least a dozen 9 tribulations Emperor Gu had passed the test. Next, as soon as the sacred tranquil king's voice sounded, the jade talisman in Chu Fengmian's hand lit up. It was Chu Fengmian's turn. Chu Fengmian also interrupted his thoughts of comprehending the sword Dao totem and stepped into the arena. Is that the Longjing Emperor Gu? He should have no problem passing. After all, he has a half-step celestial realm ancient centipede. It shouldn't be difficult for him to defeat 3 people. Seeing Chu Fengmian enter the arena, some people around discussed. Choose your opponent. The sacred tranquil king said calmly. It's you. Come up. Chu Fengmian glanced around and finally fixed his eyes on an eagle-nosed disciple of the Sea Sacrificial sect. This eagle-nosed disciple of the Sea Sacrificial sect was one of the disciples who had disdained and ridiculed him at the beginning. However, his aura was considered one of the strongest among the disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect, so no one had chosen him. How dare he challenge Kuenda? He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Doesn't he know that Kuenda's strength is close to that of a core disciple? Longjing Emperor Gu? I remember this arrogant guy. It's said that he was the one who controlled the ancient centipede to come to the Sea Sacrificial sect. That ancient centipede is a half-step celestial realm wild beast. It's extremely powerful. So what if it's a half-step celestial realm ancient centipede? It's not like Kuenda has never defeated a half-step celestial realm expert. Some of the disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect were discussing animatedly when they saw Chu Fengmian's choice. In order to pass the assessment, even a half-step celestial realm martial artist or demon god would choose some weak opponents. For example, no one dared to choose Kuenda or even Songlong. After all, although they were the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, they had defeated a half-step celestial realm expert. Even the most arrogant people did not dare to be arrogant in this assessment. This time, there was an accident. After 3 consecutive battles, he actually chose such a strong opponent first. Even if he has the ancient centipede as his backing, he is too arrogant. Around the arena, the martial artists and demon gods who were waiting for the assessment shook their heads. They felt that Chu Fengmian's choice was too unwise. Oh, How dare you challenge me? The sea sacrificial sect disciple by the name of Kuan sneered when he saw that Chu Fengyan had chosen him. He took a step onto the stage and looked at Chu Fengyan. After sizing him up, he revealed some disdain. You are not qualified to challenge me with your strength. I heard that you have this half-step celestial realm, ancient centipede. Summon it. Kuan stared at Chu Fengyan, and the disdain in his tone was undisguised. Is that so? Unfortunately, I don't think you have the ability to force me to summon the ancient centipede. I am enough to deal with you. Chu Fengyan said casually. Genius memorized this site's address in a second. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 1943. Chu Fengyan said in a casual tone. However, the arrogance in his words was vividly reflected. At first glance, one could tell that he was an extremely arrogant person. His words were full of absolute confidence. Little guy, you're quite arrogant, but I'd like to see how arrogant you are. When Kuan heard Chu Fengyan's words, he laughed instead of being angry. However, everyone could feel a murderous intent in his laughter. Kuan had the intention to kill. Although the two sides would not kill each other in the assessment of the Seashore sect, according to the rules, once on the stage, life and death would be determined. Dying. Kuan roared and took the lead to speak. The martial technique of the Seashore sect was the most ancient inheritance of the Sea clan. Suddenly, his power condensed on his fist, and he punched at Chu Fengyan. 4C's divine fist. Under the stimulation of Kuan-da's fist, the power of his bloodline burst out completely. Kuan-da had a little bit of the ancient Yuan whale clan's bloodline, so his power was boundless. Although it was a martial technique of the Sea clan, his brute force surpassed that of a demon god. The moment the fist was blasted out, the violent power could be felt by everyone present. Many half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon gods around the arena could not help but show some deep fear in their eyes. The power of Kuan-da's 4C's divine fist alone was not inferior to a real half-step celestial realm martial artist. The power of his bloodline was fully activated and condensed on this fist. The power of this fist was so powerful that even a half-step celestial realm martial artist would not dare to take it head-on. The fist wind blasted directly at Chu Fengyan's strong body. It was not flashy, but pure power. Competing with strength? Humph! Break! Chu Fengyan sneered when he saw Kuan-da's fist. At the same time, the power of the dragon whale bloodline was activated and he suddenly blasted out a palm. The moment the palm was blasted out, the spiritual power condensed and suddenly turned into a battle dragon claw, colliding with Kuan-da's fist in the air. The power of the battle dragon claw came down and swept away everything. Kuan-da's fist wind resisted the power of the battle dragon claw for a moment before it could no longer resist and suddenly shattered. Kuan-da's figure was swept away by the battle dragon's claw. The powerful force caused him to spit out blood as he was sent flying. Kuan-da fell out of the ring. Now, he didn't even have the strength to stand up. He was seriously injured by a palm strike. It would take at least a few years for him to recover. One move. Am I seeing things? So strong. Kuan-da is one of the top seed disciples of the Sea Sacrifice School. Even I've heard of him, but he was defeated by a single move? What kind of martial skill did Longjing Emperor Gu use? Did you guys understand? From the looks of it, it should be a dragon clan's martial skill. Not bad. It should be a top-quality dragon ancestor's martial skill. Furthermore, this person's comprehension of the dragon clan's martial skills is extremely deep. I actually couldn't see any flaws in that move. So powerful. No wonder Longjing Emperor Gu dared to challenge Kuan-da. I didn't expect him to hide such strength. We even underestimated him. It seems that this person will definitely pass the test. Moreover, the strength he displayed is so powerful. I'm afraid he will have a very high status in the Sea Sacrifice School. The martial artists and Yao gods around the ring looked at Chu Fengyan and discussed animatedly. Even those who had passed the test looked at Chu Fengyan. Their eyes lit up as if they were considering something. Oh, he's a good person. Even the sacred Tranquil King looked at Chu Fengyan with a hint of approval. In the Sea Sacrifice School, strength was everything. The stronger one was, the more respect one would receive. On the other side, several disciples of the sea sacrifice school hurriedly ran over to check on Kuan-Da's injuries. Many of their faces changed when they saw how serious Kuan-Da's injuries were. This kind of injury would take several years to recover. The competition within the sea sacrifice school was extremely fierce. These sea disciples also needed to constantly improve their strength to maintain their status. Once they were surpassed by others, they would be deprived of their resources. For a seed disciple like Kuan-Da, who had a promising future, being unable to improve for several years was simply a disaster. Several disciples of the sea sacrifice school who had a good relationship with Kuan-Da looked at Chu Fengyan with deep killing intent. How could he be so ruthless? A disciple of the sea sacrifice school looked at Chu Fengyan with a hint of anger in his eyes. Kid, just you wait. When you enter the sea sacrifice school, I will avenge Kuan-Da. Is that so? You don't have to wait that long. My next opponent is you. Come on up. Chu Fengyan said indifferently when he heard the disciple's words. It's Kuan-Yun. This person's strength is above Kuan-Da's. The Longjing Emperor Gu's next opponent is actually him. This is interesting. Kuan-Yun will definitely avenge Kuan-Da. The demon immortals and the disciples of the sea sacrifice school who were waiting for the assessment around the arena all looked like they were waiting to watch a good show. Kuan-Da and Kuan-Yun were of the same clan. They grew up together and had a deep friendship. After Chu Fengyan injured Kuan-Da, he challenged Kuan-Yun. There would probably be a great battle. All right, just you wait. I will make sure you die without a burial place. I will give you some time to leave behind your last words. Otherwise, you will die without any last words. Kuan-Yun jumped into the arena and looked at Chu Fengyan with surging killing intent. You talk too much. Let's fight. Chu Fengyan waved his hand and said disdainfully. In his eyes, it was as if Chu Fengyan did not even care about Kuan-Yun. You are courting death. Kuan-Yun sneered and suddenly attacked. His attack was extremely fast. Before his voice died away, he had already attacked. His body suddenly changed and turned into a huge yuan whale that was a few hundred feet long. His huge body crashed towards Chu Fengyan. The last time Kuan-Da fought with Chu Fengyan, he did not use his full strength and was defeated by Chu Fengyan with a sudden move. This time, Kuan-Yun learned his lesson. He turned into his original form and displayed his strongest strength. After turning into his original form, Kuan-Yun's brute force was many times stronger than a human's. Although his speed was reduced, Kuan-Yun turned into a huge yuan whale that was a few hundred feet long and charged towards Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan did not even have the chance to dodge. If he wanted to dodge, he would have to leave the arena. However, according to the rules, once he left the arena, he would be considered to have failed. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 1944. In this arena, Kuan-Yun's strength is much more terrifying than outside. This kid is too arrogant. He's going to suffer a great loss. At this time, he won't even have the chance to summon the primordial centipede. He is too arrogant. He is only asking for trouble. There are no weaklings in the sea sacrificial sect. Although this guy is strong, he is too arrogant. With his strength, he will definitely be in a high position in the sea sacrificial sect. At that time, he will be groomed by the sea sacrificial sect, and his strength will be even more terrifying. If he is defeated by Kuan-Yun at this time, all his efforts will be in vain. Many of the half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon gods shook their heads. The Yuan Whale clan was the clan with the strongest brute force among the sea beasts. In this narrow arena, it was enough for Kuan-Yun to exert all his strength and defeat Chu Fengyan. Even if it were them, they might not have the ability to withstand Kuan-Yun's attack. However, even the half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon gods would not choose someone like Kuan-Yun when they were choosing an opponent. It would be asking for trouble. Many people shook their heads and looked at Chu Fengyan with disdain. He was only a piece of trash with strength, but no brains. In the arena, Kuan-Yun, who had turned into a huge yuan whale, was charging towards Chu Fengyan. The huge yuan whale exploded with a tyrannical force that could crush everything in front of it. The entire arena shook as if it could not withstand such a huge force. Chu Fengyan stood where he was and looked at the huge yuan whale that was charging towards him. He did not even try to avoid it. Just as the huge yuan whale was about to hit Chu Fengyan suddenly moved. He raised his hand, and suddenly, the dragon power burst out. The power of thousands of Dragon Clan martial skills condensed at this moment and turned into a huge dragon claw that was 1,000 feet long. Rumble. The huge dragon claw collided with Kuan Yun in the arena. Kuan Yun's body trembled, and the huge yuan whale's body was caught by the huge dragon claw. In the next moment, he was thrown down. Bang! Kuan Yun's body was crushed by the gigantic dragon claw. He reverted to his human form and was held in the palm of the gigantic dragon claw. Kuan Yun, who had fallen into the dragon claw, was in an incomparably miserable state. His body was already seriously injured, and he was unable to escape from Chu Fengyan's grasp. One move, yet another defeat in one move. Not only did he defeat Kuan De, but he also defeated Kuan Yun with the same move. The surroundings of the arena were silent. Whether it was the disciples of the Sea Sacrifice sect, or the martial artists and Yao immortals who were waiting to take the test, it was as if no one had expected this to happen. Among these people, even though there were some who believed that Chu Fengyan had hidden his strength, they believed that he would only be able to emerge victorious after fighting with Kuan Yun for a while. However, he did not expect Chu Fengyan to defeat Kuan Yun so easily. They couldn't clearly see the profundity of Chu Fengyan's move, but they could all feel how terrifying it was. If Chu Fengyan had defeated Kuan De with one move, there was a possibility that it was because Kuan De was too arrogant and did not use his full strength. However, this time around, Kuan Yun had learned his lesson from Kuan De. When he attacked, he reverted to his original form and unleashed his full strength. However, he was still easily defeated by Chu Fengyan with one move. Oh, this person's move has faintly integrated thousands of Dragon Clan martial skills. Could this be the 9 moves of the ancestor? Some of the martial artists and Yao immortals who had some understanding of Dragon Clan martial skills could faintly see the profundity of Chu Fengyan's move. The 9 moves of the ancestor. The thousands of Dragon Clan martial skills in the world today were derived from the 9 moves of the ancestor. The move that Chu Fengyan had just executed seemed to have integrated thousands of different Dragon Clan martial skills. It was simply similar to the 9 moves of the ancestor. It's still a little noisy. It's not the real 9 moves of the ancestor. However, this person's comprehension of Dragon Clan martial skills has indeed reached an extremely high level. Even among the real Dragon Clan, there are very few Dragon Clan geniuses who can comprehend Dragon Clan martial skills to such an extent. This person is only Long Jing. It seems that he has had a fortuitous encounter to be able to comprehend Dragon Clan martial skills to such an extent. Many people looked at Chu Fengyan and whispered to each other. Even the sacred transcendent Sea King looked at Chu Fengyan with glittering eyes, as if he was thinking about something. In the arena, Kuan Yun was still struggling in Chu Fengyan's hand. However, no matter how hard he struggled, he could not escape from Chu Fengyan's hand. Looking at the gazes below, Kuan Yun felt a sense of humiliation. Kuan Yun was a disciple of the Sea Sacrifice sect. Although he had been defeated by Chu Fengyan, he was still arrogant. He looked at Chu Fengyan and roared loudly. "Damn it, little bastard, let go of me. Otherwise, when we reach the Sea Sacrifice sect, you will suffer." "Oh, you still dare to insult me at this time? You are courting death." When Chu Fengyan heard Kuan Yun's words, killing intent flashed in his eyes. Just as he was about to strike, a voice sounded from the side. "Let go of Kuan Yun." Although his voice sounded light and airy, there was a hint of command in his tone. Chu Fengyan looked to the side and saw that the person who had spoken was Tsang Lang. When Tsang Lang saw that Chu Fengyan was about to kill Kuan Yun, he tried to stop him. However, he was not trying to persuade Chu Fengyan. Instead, he was threatening Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan looked at Tsang Lang and rolled his eyes as if he was thinking about something. Suddenly, Chu Fengyan sneered. "Let him go. I don't think there is such a rule in the arena. Who do you think you are? How dare you order me around? I did not want to kill him. Since you have spoken, he can go to hell. As Chu Fengyan spoke, he suddenly exerted more force in his hand. Kuan Yun's body was squeezed until it swelled up. Eventually, it reached its limit and shattered into pieces. Kuan Yun was crushed in Chu Fengyan's hand. That was not the end. Chu Fengyan gathered his spiritual energy and suddenly struck out with his palm. Kuan Yun's body had just been crushed, but his essence blood that had escaped did not escape the palm and was completely destroyed. This palm cut off all of Kuan Yun's vitality. He did not even have the chance to reconstruct his body and died on the spot. As a seed disciple of the Sea Sacrifice sect, Kuan Yun was killed by Chu Fengyan in the arena. This scene caused the people below the ring to feel a chill in their hearts. End of chapter. Chapter 1945. What is he trying to do? Does he want to make an enemy out of Songlang? There are many people from the Kuan family in the Sea Sacrifice sect. Killing Kuan Yun will cause a lot of trouble. He's too arrogant. He might not be afraid of Songlang. Look at his attack just now. It's different from before. He's obviously hiding his strength. Is he going to pick Songlang as his next opponent? Isn't he courting death by picking Songlang? Songlang's strength is enough to kill a half-step to celestial being. He's just Emperor Gu of the 9 tribulations. How can he challenge Songlang? The martial artists and demon gods below the arena started to discuss when they saw Chu Fengyan's action. Everyone knew that there was no difference between life and death in the arena. However, there were only a few people who dared to kill a disciple of the Sea Sacrifice sect in the assessment arena. Moreover, Songlang had spoken just now. However, Chu Fengyan killed Kuan Yun without taking Songlang's words seriously. This was a provocation to Songlang. Courting death? Seeing Chu Fengyan kill Kuan Yun without hesitation, Songlang looked at Chu Fengyan coldly. His eyes were full of killing intent. Suddenly, a force burst out from Songlang's back and turned into a blade. It slashed at Chu Fengyan, who was in the arena. He could not tolerate Chu Fengyan's provocation of his authority. However, just as the blade was about to hit Chu Fengyan, a surge of spiritual energy burst out in the air. Pingsheng Sea King smashed Songlang's blade into pieces with a casual blow. Outsiders are not allowed to interfere in the arena, Pingsheng Sea King said coldly. He glanced at Songlang. Seeing Pingsheng Sea King intervening, Songlang could only suppress his anger. However, the murderous intent in his eyes did not diminish at all when he looked at Chu Fengyan. Boy, I'll kill you even if you enter the Sea Sacrifice sect. You probably don't know how powerful I am. How dare you make an enemy out of me? Songlang said coldly as he stared at Chu Fengyan. These words were a blatant threat. According to the rules of the Sea Sacrifice sect, disciples of the same sect were not allowed to kill each other. However, Songlang's words were completely ignored. The pacifying Sacred Ocean Emperor remained silent. In his opinion, as long as no one interfered with the trial, he would not interfere. Rules were rules, but in the Sea Sacrifice sect, power was everything. If you were weaker than someone else, then you died. No one would sympathize with the weak. Who will you choose for the next battle? The Sacred Transcendent Ocean King turned around and looked at Chu Fengyan. His expression did not change at all. Kuan Yun had been crushed to death by Chu Fengyan, so it was not worth his attention. To the Sea Sacrifice sect, Kuan Yun was just an insignificant figure. There were thousands upon thousands of disciples like Kuan Yun in the Sea Sacrifice sect. Even if one of them was killed by Chu Fengyan today, it wasn't worth Chu Fengyan's attention. Moreover, when Kuan Yun attacked earlier, he already had killing intent. Now that he was killed by Chu Fengyan, there was nothing much that he could say. My next opponent will be him. Chu Fengyan's eyes flickered and finally landed on Songlang. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Didn't you want to kill me? You don't have to wait until I join the Sea Sacrifice sect. Come up now. All right, Songlang shouted coldly. Without any hesitation, he moved his body and stepped into the arena. His cold eyes fell on Chu Fengyan. The word, all right, contained endless anger. Songlang had already suppressed the anger in his heart and was prepared to attack Chu Fengyan when he joined the Sea Sacrifice sect. But now that Chu Fengmian had chosen him as his opponent, he could release his anger. No one has ever dared to challenge me. Kneel down and kill yourself now, and I can leave your corpse intact. Otherwise, you can wait to suffer a fate worse than death. Song Lang stared at Chu Fengmian. His voice was filled with killing intent. Anyone who heard Song Lang's words would feel a chill in their heart. The killing intent in Song Lang's words could not be faked. In the arena, life and death did not matter. Even if Song Lang killed Chu Fengmian, it would be a meaningless death. Even if Chu Fengmian had some power behind him, he would not dare to seek revenge. Otherwise, it would be a challenge to the dignity of the Sea Sacrifice sect. No power in the entire Songhai Star Zone dared to challenge the Sea Sacrifice sect's dignity. You're not that strong, but you talk big. Facing Song Lang's threat, Chu Fengmian played it down. He stood there, not showing the slightest bit of nervousness. This made many people wonder if Chu Fengmian was hiding his strength. Was that why he was so confident when facing Song Lang? Although Song Lang had not shown his full strength, everyone present had seen how ruthless he was when he dealt with those spies. Chu Fengmian must have something to rely on if he dared to show such confidence. But even if everyone thought that Chu Fengmian had something to rely on, he would not be a match for Song Lang today. Song Lang's strength was not as simple as he had shown. Song Lang's face turned even colder when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He stared at Chu Fengmian and said, "You're only relying on that immemorial centipede. Release it. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to attack when I attack. I will kill you in one move." "Is that so? Kill me in one move?" Chu Fengmian looked at Song Lang and suddenly attacked. The moment he attacked, a dragon roared and two phantoms appeared behind Chu Fengmian. These two phantoms were extremely huge, at least 10,000 feet tall. They were Primogenitor Tianlong and Xianjing. These were the phantoms of the two innate divine beasts. Although Chu Fengmian's dragon whale bloodline contained very little Xianjing bloodline, he still summoned the Xianjing phantoms with the help of the Genesis Qi in his body. The moment the two phantoms appeared and poured into Chu Fengmian's body, his aura was completely different from before. If Chu Fengmian was an ordinary person just a moment ago, then the current Chu Fengmian was a giant beast that had suddenly awakened. The power of Xianjing and Primogenitor Tianlong burst out at the same time. Powerful and boundless power erupted. Many of the onlooking half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon gods felt a sense of danger the moment they sensed the power. Everyone guessed that Chu Fengmian must have hidden his strength. That was why he dared to challenge Song Lang. But now, the power that Chu Fengmian suddenly burst out was beyond their expectations. It was too terrifying. End of chapter. Chapter 1946. The power of the two shadows burst out, making Song Lang somewhat unable to withstand it. Song Lang was in the center of the pressure of the two forces in the arena. He felt that the power of the two shadows was like two mountains that pressed down on his body. Song Lang roared, and a trident suddenly condensed in his hand. At the same time, his body roared, and countless scales suddenly grew on his body. His body grew many times larger. Song Lang was originally a member of the Sea Clan. Transforming into his true form was when he was at his strongest. Song Lang transformed into his true form of the Sea Clan. Holding the trident in his hand, he immediately rushed towards Chu Fengmian. Thousands of sharp lights slashed towards Chu Fengmian at the same time. Song Lang has been forced to reveal his true form. It's been a long time since Song Lang used his full strength. I didn't expect to see it today. This Longjing Emperor Gu is also very powerful. I didn't expect him to have hidden his strength so well. There will definitely be a fierce battle between him and Song Lang. Many disciples of the Poseidon sect, as well as the surrounding martial artists and Yao gods who were waiting for the assessment, were watching the battle carefully. They also wanted to see the true strength of Chu Fengmian and Song Lang and their true trump cards. In the Poseidon sect, all disciples were enemies. Now that they could see Chu Fengmian's true strength, they could be prepared in the future. However, just when everyone thought that the fierce battle was about to begin, all of a sudden, a series of explosions took place in the ring. The two shadows behind Chu Fengmian merged into Chu Fengmian's body and the wind from his fists. Chu Fengmian punched out with both fists. The two completely different forces burst out from Chu Fengmian's hands at the same time. They complemented each other and shattered the countless sharp lights from Tsang Lang's trident. Boom! After shattering the countless sharp lights, the two fists landed heavily on Tsang Lang's body. The trident in Tsang Lang's hand was immediately shattered by the power of the two fists. The boundless power bombarded Tsang Lang's body. Puff! Countless scales on Tsang Lang's body were shattered. He spat out a large amount of essence blood from his mouth. He was seriously injured by Chu Fengmian's fists. Didn't you want to kill me in one move? Is this your strength? A piece of trash? How dare you speak such arrogant words? Chu Fengmian looked at Vast Wave and shouted coldly. The instant he spoke, Chu Fengmian suddenly grabbed it. Tsang Lang was completely powerless in front of Chu Fengmian's power. He was caught in the palm of Chu Fengmian's hand. Chu Fengmian exerted some force with his palm, and Tsang Lang was crushed to death just like Kuan-Yin. Tsang Lang's strength was indeed a little more powerful than an ordinary martial artist of the half-step celestial realm, but in front of Chu Fengmian, it was still not enough. After killing Tsang Lang, Chu Fengmian stood calmly in the ring. At this point, there were still many martial artists, Yao gods, and disciples of the Sea Sacrifice sect who had yet to recover from the previous scene. Many people were still looking in the direction of the arena in disbelief. Tsang Lang was killed by Chu Fengmian just like that? In their hearts, they still felt that there would be a fierce battle between Chu Fengmian and Tsang Lang in the arena. But he didn't expect it to end so quickly. In just one move, Tsang Lang was killed by Chu Fengmian. Even Tsang Lang didn't have the slightest ability to resist. He was simply vulnerable in front of Chu Fengmian. Was Tsang Lang too weak? But everyone could see the strength that Tsang Lang had displayed just now. Moreover, when facing Chu Fengmian, Tsang Lang had revealed his true form of the Sea Clan. Obviously, he had used his true strength, but he was still killed by Chu Fengmian in one move. Sacred Tranquil King's eyes were full of deep surprise. He sized up Chu Fengmian for a long time. Suddenly, he sent a jade talisman into the Sea Sacrifice sect to send a message to someone. How strong is this man? I don't know. How can he kill Tsang Lang with one move? Even the core disciples of the Sea Sacrifice sect may not be able to do so. Did you guys see the last punch? He actually mobilized the power of Xianjing and Ancestor Tianlong at the same time. This kind of fist technique is unheard of. No wonder he has the immemorial centipede as his mount. It seems that his strength alone is extremely terrifying, not to mention his profound background. Among the onlookers, even the half-step celestial realm martial artists and demonic immortals, there was a lot of fear in their eyes as they looked at Chu Fengmian. Obviously, they were frightened by Chu Fengmian's last punch. Chu Fengmian's last punch was a fist technique that he had suddenly created based on what he had learned. Chu Fengmian's understanding of martial Tao was no longer limited to one move or style. Although he couldn't create immortal arts yet, he still couldn't do so. Although he couldn't create immortal arts yet, he could still create several moves that were close to swordsmanship. Dragon Whale, Sea-Splitting Fist. Chu Fengmian murmured. This was the name of the punch that Chu Fengmian had just performed. It was also what he would rely on to become the Dragon Whale Emperor Gu in the future. I didn't expect such a person to appear in this year's batch. He can kill Tsang Lang with one move. Amazing. Such a person is comparable to the best among the core disciples. Unfortunately, he's too strong and wasn't nurtured by the Sea Sacrifice sect. Otherwise, he would have the ability to compete for the position of sect lord in the future. Pingxing Sea King looked at Chu Fengmian with some emotion. Experts like Chu Fengmian could only become deacons, protectors, or elders if they joined the Sea Sacrifice sect. They couldn't become core disciples. Among the core disciples of the Sea Sacrifice sect, only the geniuses nurtured by the Sea Sacrifice sect since childhood had a clean background. For example, Although Chu Fengmian and the others could also have a high status in the Sea Sacrifice sect, they couldn't become core disciples and compete for the position of sect lord. After a while, the Jade Talisman that Pingsheng Sea King sent out seemed to have received a reply. He glanced at it and then said to Chu Fengmian, "You passed the test. You can go in directly. Behind the palace is the Sea Sacrifice sect. Someone will receive you there." Pingsheng Sea King said to Chu Fengmian. He didn't ask Chu Fengmian to wait here. Chu Fengmian's heart trembled. He knew that Pingsheng Sea King must have other arrangements. After all, Chu Fengmian had passed the test 3 times in a row. 3 consecutive battles ended in 3 moves. Even among the half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon immortals who came to participate in the test, few could do that. Moreover, Chu Fengmian was just a 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. In the last battle, Chu Fengmian killed Songlong with 1 move. Songlong was quite famous in the Sea Sacrifice sect. His strength was not weaker than the core disciples. After Chu Fengmian killed Songlong, the Sea Sacrifice sect members looked at Chu Fengmian with fear. They didn't dare to provoke Chu Fengmian anymore. End of chapter. Chapter 1947. In the Sea Sacrifice sect, strength was the most important thing. The stronger one was, the less people dared to provoke them. If one was blindly submissive, they would only be looked down upon and bullied. Kuinda, who had been injured by Chu Fengmian before, now looked at Chu Fengmian with incomparable fear. He no longer had any thoughts of revenge. This was the benefit of strength. Seeing the sacred tranquil monarch's unique arrangement of letting Chu Fengmian enter alone, the surrounding cultivators and Yao gods didn't dare to make a sound. Strength was everything. Chu Fengmian's strength naturally attracted some attention from the Sea Sacrifice sect. However, this was exactly what Chu Fengmian wanted. Chu Fengmian had joined the Sea Sacrifice sect to get close to Lan Ming and get close to the legendary sacrificial lake to obtain the colored glaze pure water. Chu Fengmian had gathered some information on the sacrificial lake along the way. The sacrificial lake was the holy land of the Sea Sacrifice sect. It was very similar to the Sword Lake of the Sea's Word sect. It was said that any cultivator or Yao god that entered the sacrificial lake would experience a sharp increase in strength and obtain great benefits. However, entering the sacrificial lake was much more difficult than entering the Sword Lake of the Sea's Word sect. One had to go through layers upon layers of inspection before entering the sacrificial lake. This was because the sacrificial lake wasn't just a holy land for the Sea Sacrifice sect disciples. It also concealed shocking secrets. It was the core of the Sea Sacrifice sect. The Sea Sacrifice sect's name highlighted the word sacrifice. As the name implied, the sacrificial lake was one of the most important places in the Sea Sacrifice sect. Even though Chu Fengmian had used a lot of methods, he still hadn't obtained accurate information about the sacrificial lake. However, there was one thing that Chu Fengmian understood. Regardless of whether it was the disciples of the Sea Sacrifice sect, the protectors, or the elders, only those with extremely powerful strength and extremely high status in the Sea Sacrifice sect were qualified to enter. If Chu Fengmian had joined the Sea Sacrifice sect as an ordinary deacon or guardian, he probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to enter the sacrificial lake for decades. Therefore, Chu Fengmian had displayed such strength in order to attract the Sea Sacrifice sect's upper echelons to value him. That way, his chances of entering the sacrificial lake would be much higher. Of course, all of this could only be done if Chu Fengmian truly joined the Sea Sacrifice sect. The sacred Pingsheng Sea King had arranged for Chu Fengmian to enter the Sea Sacrifice sect first, and Chu Fengmian understood his intentions. Clearly, the sacred Pingsheng Sea King's people wanted to rope him in. The Sea Sacrificial sect was also divided into different factions. For example, the Sacrificial Lake, the Sea Sacrificial sect's Law Enforcement Hall, the Sacred Panacea Hall, and so on. Although they all had their own duties and belonged to the Sea Sacrificial sect, they were still independent factions. For example, the Sacred Peace Ocean King belonged to one of these forces. The truly outstanding geniuses who had yet to officially join the Sea Sacrifice sect would be snatched away by these forces. It didn't matter to Chu Fengmian which force he joined. In any case, he didn't come here to cultivate for a long time. On the one hand, he was here to avoid the pursuit of the Sea Sword sect. On the other hand, he was here for the glazed clean water and to kill Lan Ming. However, since the tranquil sacred ocean king wanted to rope him in, Chu Fengmian could also raise some conditions to prepare for the sacrificial lake. Chu Fengmian thought as he walked past the palace. At the end of the palace was a teleportation formation. The Sea Sacrificial sect was, of course, not in the Sacrificial Heaven Sea City. The Sacrificial Heaven Sea City was only a gateway. Only through this teleportation formation could one reach the real Sea Sacrificial sect. Chu Fengmian stepped into the teleportation formation. Suddenly, the world spun, and he felt that he had arrived in a unique world. This was also a small world with an extremely rich spiritual qi. The spiritual qi here was much richer than any place Chu Fengmian had ever been. Cultivating here almost didn't need to worry about the lack of spiritual qi. Moreover, Chu Fengmian constantly sensed an ancient aura among the spiritual weapons here, as well as a little bit of the power of the chaos. This is actually a small world similar to the Desolation era. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but think as he sensed the spiritual qi in this small world. It was said that the most ancient world was called the Desolation era. It was an incomparably huge world, so huge that it was boundless. On that continent, there was a rich aura of the chaos everywhere. Therefore, in that era, there were countless experts, immortals, and even immortal emperors. Later on, when the Desolation era was shattered, there were countless continents and worlds. Most of the aura of the chaos disappeared along with the Desolation era. However, there were still some small worlds that still had remnants of the aura of the chaos. For example, the Mad Dragon Emperor had found a mountain that was filled with the aura of the chaos. That was why he was able to rely on the aura of the chaos to suppress his injuries and keep him alive. The Sea Sacrificial sect had also found a small world that contained the aura of the chaos. It was in this small world that the Sea Sacrificial sect was established. However, this small world was indeed very suitable for the Sea tribe. In the center of this small world was an incomparably huge lake. Although it was a lake, its size was even bigger than an ocean. There were tens of thousands of islands on the lake. On each island, there was a splendid palace. Each island was like a faction that was independent of each other. Many disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect were walking through it. What Chu Fengmian was most wary of was an ancient temple-like structure at the center of the island. Inside this ancient temple, Chu Fengmian sensed an aura that made him shudder. The celestial realm. In that temple-like building, there was a real celestial realm expert. And that person was even stronger than the Waterfront Sword Emperor that Chu Fengmian had fought before. Who is it? Is it the Sea Sacrificial Emperor or the Eastwood Sea Emperor? Or perhaps the other hidden sea emperors of the Sea Sacrificial sect? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but wonder. Inside the Sea Sacrificial sect, Chu Fengmian didn't dare to wantonly use his spiritual sense to investigate. He could only watch from afar and guess. In addition, Chu Fengmian also sensed a number of powerful auras in the lake. It seemed that many of the Sea Sacrificial sect's experts and old-timers were hidden in the lake. With a casual glance, Chu Fengmian knew how terrifying the Sea Sacrificial sect was. Although many of their auras weren't in the celestial realm, they were like Yu Wuhin, people who could break through the celestial tribulation at any time. It was no wonder that the Sea Sacrificial sect had always been the most important faction in the Cerulean Sea Starfield. Its overall strength was indeed unfathomable. End of chapter. Chapter 1948. Although Chu Fengmian had successfully sneaked into the Sea Sacrifice sect, he still had to be careful. You're the person that Elder Pingsheng asked me to pick up? While Chu Fengmian was still sizing up the Sea Sacrifice sect, a person suddenly flew out from the depths of the sect, looked at Chu Fengmian, and asked. Chu Fengmian turned his head and saw a young man with a strong aura. His strength had reached the peak of the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, and he was even stronger than Song Lang, whom Chu Fengmian had killed. However, The young man's clothes didn't look like those of a disciple, but were much more luxurious. At a glance, one could tell that his status in the sea sacrifice sect was definitely not low. His name is Qin Han, a protector of the Heavenly Sea Pavilion of the Sea Sacrifice sect. This time, I'm here to pick up someone on the order of Elder Pingsheng. Are you the person that Elder Pingsheng asked me to pick up? Qin Han looked at Chu Fengmian and asked. Yes, it's an honor to meet you, Protector Qin Han. Chu Fengmian said calmly. The Elder Pingsheng that Qin Han mentioned was naturally the Sacred Ocean King. In the Sea Sacrifice sect, only those who were half a step into the celestial realm could be promoted to an elder. Although Qin Han wasn't an elder, his status as a protector wasn't low. Normally, people with good strength, like Chu Fengmian, couldn't become disciples when they entered the Sea Sacrifice sect. Instead, they would become stewards, deacons, protectors, elders, and so on. They were responsible for managing the affairs of the Sea Sacrifice sect. There were millions of disciples in the Sea Sacrifice sect. Sea disciples and core disciples were only a small part. There were also a large number of inner disciples, outer disciples, and even handyman disciples. These disciples all needed someone to manage them. Therefore, people like Chu Fengmian who joined the Sea Sacrifice sect often became stewards or deacons. They were responsible for managing the disciples of the Sea Sacrifice sect. It seemed that Qin Han was similar. However, he had already become a protector. His status in the Sea Sacrifice sect was extremely high, only below the elders. His status was equivalent to that of a core disciple. The status of an elder of the Sea Sacrifice sect was even higher than that of a core disciple. Only the best among the core disciples were qualified to be on an equal footing with an elder. You don't have to be so courteous. Once you join the Heaven Sea sect, we'll be colleagues. Your strength is something that even the Pavilion Master admires. He'll definitely put you in an important position. By then, you might even become a guardian of the Heaven Sea sect. Qin Han smiled at Chu Fengmian. He wasn't arrogant. He had heard of Song Lang's strength. A person who could kill Song Lang in one move was definitely not a weakling. He was only a peak 9 Tribulation Ancient Emperor and had no advantage over Chu Fengmian. Now that he did not know Chu Fengmian's strength, he did not want to provoke Chu Fengmian. Heaven Sea Pavilion. Asked Han Fengmian to the Sea Pavilion sect. Song sect to sect. Titus a was to him, was to be, was was a belong to the was to be. Was. What? You don't want to join? Our Heavenly Sea Pavilion is one of the strongest forces in the Sea Sacrifice sect. If you join us, you'll benefit a lot in the future. Qin Han could not help but ask when he heard Chu Fengmian's question. Forget it. I can't make the decision. Come with me to the Heavenly Sea Pavilion. The Pavilion Master will see you. If you have any questions, you can ask him directly. Qin Han said and prepared to leave with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian thought for a moment and followed Qin Han. They turned into a ray of light and flew towards the Heavenly Sea Pavilion. Since he had just arrived at the Sea Sacrifice sect, he didn't know much about it. He might as well follow Qin Han. However, Chu Fengmian didn't want to join the Heavenly Sea Pavilion. The Heavenly Sea Pavilion wasn't famous, and its status in the Sea Sacrifice sect shouldn't be too high. The Law Enforcement Hall, Sacred Elixir Hall, and Sacrificial Lake were the strongest forces in the Sea Sacrifice sect. Chu Fengmian wanted to join the Sacrificial Lake the most. That way, he could get closer to Lan Ming and look for opportunities. However, joining the Sacrificial Lake wasn't easy. The Sacrificial Lake was the most mysterious force in the Sea Sacrifice sect. Ordinary disciples weren't qualified to join it. As a newcomer, it was even more impossible for Chu Fengmian to join the Sacrificial Lake directly. Protector Qin Han, what benefits will I get if I join the Heavenly Sea Pavilion? Can I go to the legendary Sacrificial Lake? It is said that as long as I cultivate in the Sacrificial Lake, my strength will undergo earth-shaking changes when I come out. Is it true? Chu Fengmian followed Qin Han to fly all the way and asked him about it indirectly. The Sacrificial Lake? Qin Han's eyes revealed some disdain and mockery when he heard Chu Fengmian's question. He seemed to be mocking Chu Fengmian for being ignorant. However, he didn't show it. After a while, he said, "Those who can cultivate in the sacrificial lake are the elders and core disciples of the sea sacrifice sect. Even among the core disciples, there are only a few who can go there. As for the benefits of cultivating in the sacrificial lake, I don't know. However, it is similar to what the rumors say. The strength of the disciples and elders who can cultivate in the sacrificial lake will increase a lot. You don't have to ask so many questions. These things aren't up to me to decide. You can ask the pavilion master when we arrive at the Heavenly Sea Pavilion." Qin Han's tone also revealed a bit of impatience, and the speed of the escape light accelerated a little. However, at this moment, another escape light suddenly appeared in front of the two of them and blocked their path. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed. It was a young man in the escape light. The young man's face was tough and incomparably arrogant. Although he hadn't spoken yet, Chu Fengmian could tell at a glance that this young man was absolutely lawless. He was also in the Nine Tribulations Emperor's realm, but his strength was above Qin Han's. In terms of strength, he was even more powerful than Yin Longxian, whom Chu Fengmian had met before. Apart from Chu Fengmian himself, he was the strongest Nine Tribulations Emperor he had ever seen. Once this young man stepped into the half-step celestial being realm, he would be close to the half-step celestial being realm. Moreover, Chu Fengmian also felt an incomparably ancient aura from this young man. This incomparably ancient aura was hidden very deeply, but it couldn't escape Chu Fengmian's eyes. It proved that this young man should have obtained some ancient and shocking adventures, so that he could have such powerful strength. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second to remember. Book Guest House Mobile Edition. Chapter 1949. Even such a person is willing to join the ocean sacrifice sect. Chu Fengmian was astonished. The clothes of the young man in front of him were very similar to Qin Han's. His identity was also a protector. He wasn't a genius disciple cultivated by the ocean sacrifice sect. For this young man to possess such strength, he must have obtained a heaven-shaking opportunity. Such a person should not dare to submit to others. However, he had joined the ocean sacrifice sect. This gave Chu Fengmian a new understanding of the ocean sacrifice sect strength. Chu Fengmian was astonished, but his face didn't change as he watched from the side. "Wu Ju, why are you stopping me?" Qin Han's expression changed slightly when he saw the young man's arrival. He snorted coldly. "Why am I stopping you? Don't you know? The pacifying sacred Sea King is presiding over this assessment because he wants to fill his own pockets and recruit this outstanding person to the Heavenly Sea Pavilion." Wu Ju sneered. "Leave him here and you can go." "Wu Ju, does your ancestral pavilion want a medal in this?" When Qin Han heard this, he said with a sullen face, "Elder pacifying sacred Sea King wants this person. Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to explain yourself?" "Ancestral pavilion?" Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered when he heard Qin Han's words. He didn't expect Wu Ju to be a member of the ancestral pavilion. Moreover, it sounded like Wu Ju was here to recruit Chu Fengmian to join the ancestral lake. Chu Fengmian was worried that he wouldn't be able to join the ancestral pavilion. He didn't expect to meet someone from the ancestral pavilion so soon. Chu Fengmian was overjoyed, but his expression didn't change. He was too excited at this moment, which would only make others feel that something was wrong. Pacifying sacred Sea King? If he dares to cause trouble, let him go to the ancestral pavilion. I'm going to sue him for violating the rules and stuffing his own pockets. Wu Ju stared at Qin Han, and his eyes gradually turned cold. "I don't want to fight here. Don't force me." Qin Han's face turned pale. He didn't want to let him go, but he also knew that he was far from being a match for Wu Ju. Even if they fought, he would lose without a doubt. "Go." After considering for a long time, Qin Han flicked his sleeve and directly turned into an escape light and flew away. "At least you know your place," Wu Ju muttered to himself as he glanced at the departing Qin Han. Then, he looked at Chu Fengmian. "You're the one who killed Song Lang in one move? I've seen Song Lang before. He's quite a character and can be promoted to a core disciple. Can you kill him in one move? Wu Ju said as he sized up Chu Fengyan. His tone was filled with suspicion. Suddenly, Wu Ju moved. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched at Chu Fengyan. This sudden sneak attack caught many people off guard, but Chu Fengyan reacted in an instant. Chu Fengyan was just about to deliver a killing blow when he sensed that Wu Ju's attack had no killing intent. It was just a test. Chu Fengyan also clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out. It was the dragon whale sea-splitting fist that he had created before. However, this time, Chu Fengyan retained 30% of its power. He punched out and collided with Wu Ju's fist. The two forces collided in the air, and both of them took a few steps back. Oh, not bad. You're able to take my punch. It seems that your strength is not fake. Wu Ju said as he retracted his attack after testing Chu Fengyan. I can see that you're still hiding your strength. However, you have to understand that when we reach the sacrificial pavilion, you don't have to hide your strength anymore. You have to serve the sacrificial pavilion with all your strength. Do you understand? Yes, Chu Fengyan said expressionlessly. Wu Ju didn't say anything else. He turned into a ray of light and brought Chu Fengyan to the center of the sea sacrificial sect. The sacrificial pavilion was responsible for guarding the sacrificial lake. The sacrificial lake was located in the center of the sea sacrificial sect. However, when Wu Ju and Chu Fengyan approached the sacrificial temple, they suddenly landed on an island. This island was one of the closest islands to the sacrificial temple, but it was outside of the temple. Chu Fengyan thought that after joining the sacrificial pavilion, he would be able to enter the sacrificial temple and search for the colored glaze, pure water. The colored glaze, pure water was recorded in the sacrificial lake. However, it seemed that it wouldn't be so easy to enter the sacrificial temple and approach the sacrificial lake. Aren't we going to the sacrificial lake? Chu Fengyan asked without batting an eyelid. Oh, you know quite a lot. You actually know that the sacrificial lake is in the sacrificial temple? Wu Ju's eyes flickered. He glanced at Chu Fengyan and continued. Our sacrificial pavilion is responsible for guarding the sacrificial lake, but we can't enter the sacrificial temple. I know that you also want to cultivate in the sacrificial lake and reap the benefits. However, a newcomer like you isn't qualified. Only by working hard for the sacrificial pavilion and accumulating contributions will you be able to enter the sacrificial lake. Understand? Wu Ju looked at Chu Fengyan and lectured. Chu Fengyan didn't answer. A moment later, the two landed on the island. Although it was called an island, it was almost the size of a country. There were at least several thousand disciples here, enough to form a power of their own. The sacrificial pavilion was one of the smaller factions in the sea sacrificial sect. The larger factions had tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of disciples. Despite their small numbers, those who could join the sacrificial pavilion were 1 in 10,000 geniuses. Thus, its power was extremely terrifying in the sea sacrificial sect. Protector Wu Ju. All the sacrificial pavilion disciples along the way bowed successively when they saw Wu Ju arrive. The weakest of them was Emperor Gu, an inner disciple of the sea sacrificial sect. Outer disciples with the strength of true emperors weren't qualified to join the sacrificial pavilion. Several thousand of them were Emperor Gu. Chu Fengyan couldn't imagine such a terrifying force in the Daluo star field. But now, they could be seen in the sacrificial pavilion, a faction that belonged to the sea sacrificial sect. Wu Ju brought Chu Fengyan all the way to the highest palace on the island. Just as they arrived at the palace's door, a powerful voice sounded. Bring him in. Yes. Wu Ju was very respectful towards the owner of the voice. He brought Chu Fengyan into the palace. The palace was very spacious with only a huge throne in the center. A handsome middle-aged man sat on the tall throne. He sat on the throne, and Chu Fengyan could feel a huge pressure from him, even though he had yet to make a sound. End of chapter. Chapter 1950. This kind of pressure came from the middle-aged man's power. The middle-aged man's strength had reached the limit. His physical body seemed unable to contain it. His tyrannical power spread out, affecting everything in the surroundings. This kind of pressure came from this. The middle-aged man was still a half-step celestial being, but the moment he saw him, Chu Fengmian felt the same as Long Qinjue. This young man was also the kind of person who could break through the celestial tribulation and ascend to immortality at any time. However, Long Qinjue had only been able to suppress his power because of his injuries. The middle-aged man, on the other hand, had deliberately used a secret technique to conceal his power. That was why the Deva tribulation hadn't descended yet. This young man was one of the experts Chu Fengmian had sensed when he first arrived at the seashore sect. The sacrificial pavilion was responsible for guarding the sacrificial lake. This was the most important thing. The elder in charge of the sacrificial pavilion was naturally not inferior in strength. Chu Fengmian observed the middle-aged man on the throne. Wu Ju, who was beside him, stepped into the palace and stood before the throne. He respectfully spoke. Lord Lan Ming. Lan Ming? This person is Lan Ming? Chu Fengmian was taken aback when he heard Wu Ju's words. He wanted to sneak into the sacrificial lake to find traces of Lan Ming. He didn't expect the elder in charge of the sacrificial pavilion to be Lan Ming. Chu Fengmian had just arrived at the seashore sect when he encountered Lan Ming. He didn't know if he was lucky or unlucky. Chu Fengmian originally thought that Lan Ming was just an ordinary half-step celestial being expert. With such strength, Chu Fengmian could deal with him. However, the Lan Ming in front of him wasn't much different from a true celestial being expert. As long as he was willing, he could trigger the celestial tribulation in an instant. Once he passed the tribulation, he would ascend to immortality and become a celestial being expert. With Lan Ming's current strength, passing the celestial tribulation was as simple as eating and drinking. There wouldn't be any danger. Chu Fengmian also observed that Lan Ming should be cultivating this unique immortal technique. This immortal technique was related to the Black Whale bloodline. His reluctance to transcend the Deva tribulation was closely related to this immortal technique he was cultivating now. Most likely, such immortal arts could only be cultivated by those below the celestial realm. Or perhaps, like the immortal true body, once cultivated by those below the celestial realm and transcended the Deva tribulation, they would reap great benefits. It was no wonder that Lan Ming was so desperate to find a princess of the sea. His immortal technique had not been completed because he did not have enough Black Whale bloodline. If he managed to find the princess of the sea and snatch her Black Whale bloodline, he would be able to reach the heavenly human stage and become the Ocean Emperor. This Lan Ming is not easy to deal with. I need to plan carefully. However, now that I have joined the Ancestral Pavilion, I will definitely come into contact with Lan Ming in the future. I will act when the time is right. Chu Fengmian quietly deduced many things in his heart. Given Chu Fengmian's current experience, he was no longer the young man who had never left the 9 regions. With his current experience, he could see many mysteries of Lan Ming at a glance. Chu Fengmian discussed animatedly in his heart, but his expression was extremely respectful as he followed Wu Ju and bowed. You've brought him. Not bad. Lan Ming, who was sitting on the throne, slowly opened his eyes. The moment he stared at Chu Fengmian felt as though he had been seen through. Lan Ming's gaze was even more terrifying than the gaze of the Sea Sword Sect Master that Chu Fengmian had met before. Under this gaze, it seemed that all kinds of concealment would be seen through. However, Chu Fengmian was now confident that no one would be able to see through his secret unless it was a true Celestial Realm expert. Chu Fengmian had concealed most of his strength and bloodline. However, Chu Fengmian still deliberately revealed a little flaw. He revealed a small portion of progenitor Tianlong's bloodline in exchange for Lan Ming's attention. The stronger Chu Fengmian was, the higher his status in the Ancestral Pavilion would be in the future. Moreover, a little bit of progenitor Tianlong's bloodline was nothing. Although the innate divine beast bloodline was rare, it wasn't impossible to see. Not bad, not bad. You are indeed a good person. No wonder that trash Ping Sheng wanted to rope you indirectly. Lan Ming sized Chu Fengmian up and said calmly, Are you willing to join the Ancestral Pavilion and serve it? I'm willing. Chu Fengmian's expression didn't change as he said, Good. Lan Ming made a gesture. Wu Ju beside him suddenly took out a jade talisman and injected spiritual power into it. Immediately, Chu Fengyan's name and appearance appeared on the jade talisman. At the top of the jade talisman were the words Ancestral Pavilion. From today onwards, you are a protector of the Ancestral Pavilion. You must serve the Ancestral Pavilion. If you dare to betray the Ancestral Pavilion, our Ancestral Pavilion has the right to clean you up. Do you understand? Wu Ju looked at Chu Fengyan and revealed a sinister smile. His face revealed a bit of madness. Now, quickly kneel down and hand over your fortune and wealth. Then, open your Dao heart and let Lord Lan Ming plan a restriction. After Chu Fengyan agreed to join the Ancestral Pavilion, Wu Ju suddenly changed his appearance and reprimanded Chu Fengyan. Just a moment ago, he was still amiable, but the moment Chu Fengyan officially joined the Ancestral Pavilion, he seemed to have fallen into their trap and revealed his true colors. Sitting on the throne, Lan Ming didn't speak. He watched everything with cold eyes. The moment his gaze fell on Chu Fengyan, a huge force suppressed him. The sacrificial pavilion actually wants to subdue me and make me their slave? Chu Fengyan saw through Lan Ming and Wu Ju's intentions at a glance. Making someone open their Dao heart and plant a restriction was no different from being a slave. The Ancestral Pavilion rarely accepted new people. Chu Fengyan was a bit puzzled as to why they valued him. He didn't expect that they wanted to subdue him and make him their slave. Although Chu Fengyan could escape if he used all his strength, it wouldn't be easy for him to sneak into the sea sacrifice sect again if his identity was exposed. It was better to compromise here and take things one step at a time. Moreover, with Chu Fengyan's Dao heart, he didn't believe there was any restriction that could control him. Chu Fengyan thought quickly and made a decision. Riches and honor came from danger. Although it was dangerous this time, it was also an excellent opportunity. First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, book Guest House. Chapter 1951. Chu Fengyan's heart was extremely calm, but he pretended to be panicked. There shouldn't be such a rule when I join the Sea Sacrifice sect. You want me to open my Dao heart and be planted with a restriction? Do you want me to be a slave? The Ritual Pavilion is so overbearing. Then I won't join the Ritual Pavilion. Chu Fengyan stood up as he spoke. He struggled to resist Lan Ming's power and flew out of the palace. However, a massive palm suddenly descended. This palm belonged to Lan Ming, who was sitting on the throne. Chu Fengyan couldn't resist the power of this palm at all. He was suppressed to the ground and couldn't use any spirit force. What? You want to leave? The Ritual Pavilion isn't a place where people can come and go as they please. You've already joined the Ritual Pavilion. Why don't you want to follow the Ritual Pavilion's rules? Wu Ju stared at Chu Fengyan and sneered. His eyes were filled with killing intent. You're now a member of the Ritual Pavilion. Your life and death belong to the Ritual Pavilion. Do you understand? If you continue to resist, be careful that you won't be able to beg for death. At this time, pledging loyalty to Lord Lan Ming is your only chance. Chu Fengyan's face alternated between green and white. He pretended to be considering it. However, killing intent was brewing in his heart. No matter what, Chu Fengyan would kill Wu Ju sooner or later. Seeing that Chu Fengyan didn't answer, Lan Ming on the throne coldly snorted and suppressed him with power. Chu Fengyan pretended to be unable to resist. He spat out a large mouthful of blood and hurriedly spoke. I'm willing to submit. Very good. Open your Dao heart and hand over all your fortuitous encounters. Lan Ming smiled when he saw that Chu Fengyan was willing to submit. Yes. Chu Fengyan opened his Dao heart. Lan Ming pointed his finger and a wave of spirit force entered Chu Fengyan's Dao heart. It turned into a restriction. Once the restriction was planted in his Dao heart, Chu Fengyan's life and death would be controlled by Lan Ming. He would be no different from a slave. However, Chu Fengyan also quietly used the sky-devouring mystic technique to devour the power of this restriction the moment Lan Ming entered the restriction. Chu Fengyan's sky-devouring mystic art could even devour the restrictive arrays left behind by celestial realm experts. Although this Lan Ming's strength was tyrannical, he had yet to truly reach the level of the celestial realm. He was only a half-step celestial realm powerhouse. In the span of a breath, 99% of the power of the restriction that Lan Ming had just placed on Chu Fengmian's Dao heart was obliterated. With only a little power left, Lan Ming could still sense that there were still restrictions in Chu Fengmian's Dao heart. As for the remaining bit of power, Chu Fengmian could neutralize it at any time. Although it appeared that Chu Fengmian had been subdued, the restriction did not affect him in the slightest. However, Chu Fengmian still pretended to be extremely unwilling to accept this to confuse Lan Ming and Wu Ju. Very good. As for the rest, hand over your empty ring, as well as all the opportunities you have on you. Lan Ming looked at Chu Fengmian like he was looking at a slave. You should know the consequences if you don't obey. As he spoke, Lan Ming quietly activated the restriction. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian stood on the spot and trembled involuntarily. He revealed a pained expression as he hurriedly answered, "Yes, master. Master." Chu Fengmian trembled on the spot. "Yes, yes." Chu Fengmian took off the empty ring on his hand and handed it directly to Wu Ju. In order to hide his identity, Chu Fengmian had also specially made a separate empty ring to conceal his identity. Chu Fengmian had already concealed the real empty ring, so outsiders couldn't detect it at all. Now, this empty ring only contained less than 1% of Chu Fengmian's true wealth. However, this wealth was already extremely exaggerated for a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. The wealth in this empty ring was no less than the wealth of an ordinary half-step celestial realm martial artist demon god empty ring. Wu Ju picked up the empty ring, walked directly to the throne, and handed it to Lan Ming. "Oh, there are quite a lot of things. What is this? Fist technique? Dragon whale, sea-splitting fist?" Lan Ming opened one of the jade talismans, which recorded the dragon whale sea-splitting fist. Chu Fengmian had disguised this dragon whale sea-splitting fist as a fist technique created by a dragon whale clan powerhouse. Chu Fengmian had only obtained it. In addition to this empty ring, there is also the opportunity on you. Hand it over. Ancestor Tianlong's bloodline isn't something you are qualified to obtain. This thing will only bring disaster to you. Hand it over. Lan Ming sized up Chu Fengmian's empty ring. Then his gaze fell on Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's expression was extremely ugly when he heard this. He seemed to be hesitating. "What? You don't want to? Don't you know the situation you're in now?" Lan Ming's gaze was somewhat cold and murderous. "Hand it over. I'll hand it over." Chu Fengmian's expression was extremely helpless, but he seemed to be unable to resist Lan Ming. He could only move his palms suddenly, and a mass of chaotic blood flew out. It was a mass of ancestor Tianlong's essence blood. Chu Fengmian's face became extremely pale when he took out the mass of ancestor Tianlong's essence blood. He seemed to have fallen into an extremely weak state. Of course, all of this was Chu Fengmian's disguise. This mass of ancestor Tianlong's essence blood was only a part of the Genesis Qi. It was simply a drop in the ocean for Chu Fengmian. However, he still looked like he was in great pain. Good stuff. Lan Ming was extremely excited when he saw the mass of ancestor Tianlong's essence blood. He stood up from his throne and waved his hand. The mass of ancestor Tianlong's essence blood fell into his palm. Lan Ming seemed to be in a good mood after obtaining the mass of ancestor Tianlong's essence blood. He directly threw the empty ring to Wu Ju. "This empty ring is your reward," Yi Futian said. "Thank you, Lord Lan Ming." Wu Ju received the empty ring with great joy. "You're called Chu Fengmian, right? From now on, you're a protector of the sacrificial pavilion. As long as you serve the sacrificial pavilion well, I will also give you benefits. Do you understand?" Lan Ming turned his head and looked at Chu Fengmian coldly. Yes, I will serve the sacrificial pavilion well. I won't hesitate even if I have to die 10,000 times." Chu Fengmian appeared to be panicking as he hurriedly said. Lan Ming was satisfied with Chu Fengmian's performance. He nodded and said, "Good. Looking at your performance today, you're quite obedient. You can leave first. As soon as you receive a message from the Jade Talisman, hurry over. Do you understand?" "Yes." When Chu Fengmian heard this, He hurriedly turned into a streak of light and left the palace as though he had been granted amnesty. First, he set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, Book Guesthouse mobile version website. Chapter 1952. Lord Lan Ming, why didn't you kill him? After Chu Fengmian left, Wu Ju asked Lan Ming curiously in the palace. Could it be that you want to put him in an important position? Put him in an important position? I didn't kill him because he's still useful. Recently, I received news that some of the remaining members of the Lan family have appeared in the Shanghai star system. Lan Ming sneered. I've already received some news. Take a few more people to investigate in a few days. Let him live for a few more days and let him do something. Yes. Wu Ju responded respectfully. After leaving the palace, Chu Fengmian stepped onto the island. This island was called the Sacrificial Island. The disciples here were all disciples of the Sacrificial Pavilion. There was a set of clothes in the Jade Talisman that Wu Ju had given him. It was the clothes of a protector of the Sea Sacrifice sect. Chu Fengmian changed into this set of clothes. The disciples on the Sacrificial Island all bowed when they saw Chu Fengmian. The status of the Sea Sacrifice sect was very strict. Unless one had absolute strength, very few people dared to violate this rule. I didn't expect to sneak into the Sacrificial Pavilion like this. Lan Ming already thinks that I've been subdued. This is a good opportunity for me to get close to him. As long as I can get close to him, I can catch him off guard and kill him. Chu Fengmian hadn't expected that he would join the Sacrificial Pavilion as soon as he arrived at the Sea Sacrifice sect, and so many things would happen. However, all these accidents were just right for Chu Fengmian. Originally, it would have been very difficult for Chu Fengmian to get close to Lan Ming, even if he had sneaked into the Sea Sacrifice sect. After all, Lan Ming's status was very high. If Chu Fengmian became a protector of another faction, he wouldn't have been qualified to get close to Lan Ming. However, now that Chu Fengmian had joined the Sacrificial Pavilion, Lan Ming would be Chu Fengmian's immediate superior. Chu Fengmian would have countless opportunities to get close to Lan Ming. Furthermore, Lan Ming had planted a restriction in Chu Fengmian's Dao heart, making Lan Ming think that Chu Fengmian had been subdued by him. In the future, when Chu Fengmian approached Lan Ming wouldn't be on guard. Chu Fengmian's sneak attack will be enough to catch Lan Ming off guard. However, all of this still needed to be discussed at length. Chu Fengmian observed the Sacrificial Island for a while. Seeing that there was nothing noteworthy on the island, he flew directly to a mountain peak in the center of the island. There were many palaces built on the mountainside of the mountain. Only the seed disciples, core disciples, and protectors of the Sacrificial Island were qualified to occupy these palaces. Chu Fengmian casually found an empty palace and walked in. He sat in the palace and cultivated in seclusion. It seemed like he was recovering from his injuries. However, this was only a cover-up. Chu Fengmian's spiritual awareness probed the Jade Talisman for information. This information was about the Sea Sacrifice sect, and so on. Of course, Chu Fengmian was a protector of the Sea Sacrifice sect. Although his status wasn't as high as an elder's, his status was still equal to that of a core disciple's. The various secrets recorded in the Jade Talisman were much more than what an ordinary disciple would know. Of course, these secrets didn't count for much. The Jade Talisman was only for Chu Fengmian to learn about the Sea Sacrifice sect and its various rules so that he could continue to cultivate in the sect. However, Chu Fengmian didn't really intend to become a protector. He just skimmed through the various rules and regulations of the Sea Sacrifice sect. What he was most concerned about was the Sacrificial Lake. Now that Chu Fengmian had infiltrated the Sacrificial Pavilion and become an elder, he was close to Lan Ming. The next step for Chu Fengmian was to sneak into the Sacrificial Lake and search for the color-glazed clean water. Lazuli pure water was located in the center of the Sacrificial Lake. It was said that there was a pool in the deepest part of the Sacrificial Lake. That pool contained lazuli pure water. A large amount of lazuli pure water. Chu Fengmian needed a large amount of lazuli pure water to neutralize the primordial blade and the demonic will in the demon emperor's heart. Chu Fengmian's brows furrowed tightly after he finished reading the contents of the Jade Talisman. The difficulty of sneaking into the sacrificial lake was much more difficult than Chu Fengmian had imagined. The sacrificial lake was the sacred land of the sea sacrifice sect. Not many core disciples were qualified to enter the sacrificial lake. Moreover, even the sea sacrifice sect disciples who were qualified to cultivate in the sacrificial lake could only venture to the periphery of the lake. Those who truly possessed lazuli pure water were the core disciples of the sacrificial lake. Even the sea sacrifice sect disciples who were qualified to cultivate in the sacrificial lake couldn't venture there. This also meant that Chu Fengmian's plan to earn contribution points in exchange for access to the sacrificial lake wouldn't work in the sea sacrifice sect. Even if he'd expended a lot of effort to obtain the qualifications, he could only venture to the periphery of the sacrificial lake. The depths of the sacrificial lake were related to all sorts of secrets of the sea sacrifice sect. Even core disciples weren't qualified to venture there. Only a few qualified elders of the sea sacrifice sect were allowed to participate in the ceremony. Lan Ming seems to have the qualifications. Chu Fengmian's eyes twinkled. Lan Ming's status was extremely high in the sea sacrifice sect. As an elder of the sacrificial pavilion, he was one of the elders qualified to enter the depths of the sacrificial lake. If Chu Fengmian could disguise himself as Lan Ming, he might be able to enter the depths of the sacrificial lake. However, if he wanted to disguise himself as Lan Ming, the first thing he had to do was kill Lan Ming. This wasn't that easy. Lan Ming's strength wasn't inferior to the Mad Dragon Emperor's before he'd transcended the celestial tribulation. Even if Chu Fengmian used all his strength now, it wouldn't be that easy to kill Lan Ming. Once Lan Ming was forced into a desperate situation, he could no longer suppress his strength and transcend the celestial tribulation. When the time came, Lan Ming's strength would increase 5 or 6 times. If Chu Fengmian wanted to kill Lan Ming, he had to kill him with a single strike. Otherwise, he might be annihilated if he was the slightest bit careless. Chu Fengmian had once experienced being hunted down by the overlooking Sword Sea Emperor. The slightest bit of carelessness could lead to his death on the spot. Given Lan Ming's accumulation, once he transcended the celestial tribulation, his strength wouldn't be any weaker than the overlooking Sword Sea Emperor's. When the time came, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious in a fight. Chu Fengmian wanted to kill Lan Ming, but he had to be fully prepared before making a move. Once he made a move, he had to choose to do it outside the sea sacrifice sect. If he made a move inside the sea sacrifice sect, even if Chu Fengmian could kill Lan Ming, he wouldn't be able to escape the pursuit of the sea sacrifice sect's powerhouses. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second to remember. Book Guest House Mobile Edition. Chapter 1953. When Chu Fengmian arrived at the sea sacrifice sect, he realized that the sect's strength was even more terrifying than the rumors. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, facing the entire sea sacrifice sect was like a mayfly trying to shake a tree. I can't deal with Lan Ming alone. I must find a helper. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. Chu Fengmian didn't have the confidence to deal with Lan Ming alone. Chu Fengmian moved his hand, and a jade talisman appeared in his palm. This jade talisman represented Chu Fengmian as the Dragon Lord of the Blue Dragon sect. Chu Fengmian injected spiritual power into it and immediately sent a message to the Mad Dragon Emperor, asking him to come to the Blue Dragon Star Zone. If Chu Fengmian wanted to kill Lan Ming alone, he would have a slim chance of survival. But this time, Chu Fengmian could find a helper. The Mad Dragon Emperor was a true celestial realm expert. As long as he could lure Lan Ming out of the sea sacrifice sect, Chu Fengmian could act. With Chu Fengmian's strength and the help of the Mad Dragon Emperor, Chu Fengmian was confident that he could kill Lan Ming. Soon, the jade talisman in Chu Fengmian's hand lit up again. The Mad Dragon Emperor had agreed to come to the Tsanghai Star Zone. With Mad Dragon Emperor's strength, he could come to the Tsanghai Star Zone within 3 days. During this time, the Mad Dragon Emperor had been cultivating in the Blue Dragon sect to stabilize his realm and familiarize himself with the power of the celestial realm. Once he was familiar with the power of the celestial realm, his strength could improve further. When the Mad Dragon Emperor arrived, it would be time for Chu Fengmian to find a chance to act. This cave residence is quite hidden. Without Lan Ming's knowledge, I can comprehend the Sword Dao totem. Chu Fumian's eyes flickered. He just took out the Sword Dao totem he got from the Sea Sword sect to comprehend it. But at this moment, the jade talisman on Chu Fumian's chest suddenly lit up. Wu Ju's voice came from the jade talisman, asking Chu Fumian to gather at a place on the sacrificial island. He said there was a mission. Let's go take a look first. Chu Fumian didn't expect to have a mission so soon. He originally wanted to comprehend the Sword Dao totem first and comprehend the various sword arts in it, then integrate them into the ancient Sword Dao book to increase increase his strength. This way, he would have more confidence in dealing with Lan Ming. But now that Chu Fumian had infiltrated the sacrificial island, he couldn't reveal any flaws. He put away the Sword Dao totem and flew out of the palace. Following Wu Ju's instructions, Chu Fumian transformed into a beam of light and arrived at a plaza at the center of the island. There were already quite a number of martial artists and demon immortals in the square, numbering in the hundreds. Chu Fumian glanced over and saw that they were all disciples of the sacrificial pavilion, as well as many deacons and protectors. Seeing so many people, Chu Fumian was relieved. It seemed that it wasn't because Chu Fumian's identity had been exposed, but because the sacrificial pavilion really had a mission. Chu Fumian's escape light landed on the square. With his status as a protector of the sacrificial pavilion, some disciples took the initiative to make way for him to stand there. Who is that? When did our sacrificial pavilion have a new protector? Supposedly, he's the strongest figure in this year's disciple recruitment ceremony, and he was directly taken into our sacrificial pavilion to assume the position of protector. Oh, that's him? It said that he killed Song Lang in one move. Killed Song Lang in one move? Such a powerful figure? He looks mediocre to me. How could he be so capable? That's how the news spread. I don't know the details. Some disciples of the sacrificial pavilion found Chu Fumian's appearance extremely unfamiliar and began to discuss spiritedly. However, some news had already spread and allowed them to recognize Chu Fumian's identity. Song Lang was an incomparably dazzling existence among the seed disciples of the Oceanic Sacrificial Sect. He could be promoted to a core disciple at any time, but he was killed by Chu Fumian in one move. This made Chu Fumian somewhat famous. However, almost all of the disciples of the Sacrificial Pavilion were geniuses of the Oceanic Sacrificial Sect. They looked at Chu Fumian with disdain. Many were even eager to challenge Chu Fumian and see if his fame was real or fake. Chu Fumian sensed their different gazes, but he didn't bother to pay attention to them. He stood there motionless like a wooden puppet, ignoring all provocations. "Everyone is here," said a cold voice. An arrogant figure descended. It was none other than Wu Ju. "Greetings, Protector Wu Ju." The surrounding disciples of the sacrificial pavilion saluted Wu Ju to show their respect when they saw him. Protectors were only second to the elders in the Oceanic Sacrificial Sect. However, there was a huge difference in status between protectors. For example, although Chu Fumian was also a protector of the sacrificial pavilion, these disciples didn't care about him at all, because Chu Fumian didn't display any strength at all. In their opinion, such a protector wasn't even comparable to some seed disciples. Wu Ju was one of the strongest protectors of the Oceanic Sacrificial Sect. His strength was well known by everyone. Naturally, they were incomparably respectful towards the strong. "This time, I'm under the order of Lord Lan Ming to lead you to the Broken Islands to find a person. Whoever can find this person will be rewarded by Lord Lan Ming and may even be accepted as a disciple by Lord Lan Ming." Wu Ju glanced at the crowd and said, "Find a person? So many of us are just going to find a person. We can even be rewarded by Lord Lan Ming and be accepted as a disciple. That's a huge benefit. Who exactly are they looking for?" Some of the disciples of the sacrificial pavilion were shocked when they heard Wu Ju's words. They thought that the gathering of so many disciples, deacons, and protectors meant that they were going to do something big. However, they didn't expect that they were just looking for a person. Only Chu Fumian's expression changed slightly when he heard the words Broken Islands. When he parted ways with the Princess of the Sea, She had given Chu Fengyan a jade talisman. Through the jade talisman, Chu Fengyan could find out where the Princess of the Sea was. Chu Fengyan had checked once before and found out that the Princess of the Sea was in the Broken Islands. Then he thought about how the sacrificial pavilion had gathered so many disciples to go to the Shattered Isles to find a single person. This time, the person they were looking for was probably the Princess of the Sea. If Lan Ming really found out about the Princess of the Sea, it would be troublesome. Chu Fengyan was shocked, but he quickly regained his composure and listened quietly to Wu Ju's words. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second to remember. Book Guesthouse Mobile Version. Chapter 1954. Quiet. Wu Ju frowned and shouted coldly as he looked at the chaos below. The discussion stopped abruptly and quieted down. This is a spirit artifact personally refined by Lord Lan Ming. It can detect the identity of the person you're looking for. As long as it's within a radius of 10 miles, you can sense it. If you find this person, you can directly inform Lord Lan Ming through the spirit artifact. Wu Ju held a compass-like spiritual weapon in his hand and said, "There were hundreds of spiritual weapons, and every disciple of the sacrificial pavilion had one." Chu Fengyan tested the compass and found that it was a kind of spiritual tool that could detect bloodlines. With this compass, it could detect anyone with the bloodline of the black whale within a radius of 10 miles. Seeing the compass, Chu Fengyan was sure that Lan Ming had sent so many disciples to the Broken Islands to capture the Princess of the Sea. I can use this opportunity to lure Lan Ming out of the Sea Sacrifice sect. Chu Fengyan suddenly thought of a plan. He originally wanted to lure Lan Ming out of the Sea Sacrifice sect so that he could have a chance to kill Lan Ming. If Lan Ming had been hiding in the Sea Sacrifice sect, even Chu Fengyan and the Mad Dragon Emperor wouldn't have been able to kill Lan Ming in the Sea Sacrifice sect. After all, there was more than one Sky Realm expert in the Sea Sacrifice sect. Chu Fengyan was still thinking about how to lure Lan Ming out. This was the perfect opportunity. However, the Mad Dragon Emperor hadn't arrived in the Shanghai Star Zone yet. Chu Fengyan still had to wait for a while. When the Mad Dragon Emperor arrived, Chu Fengyan could carry out his plan. "All right, everyone, let's go to the Broken Star Zone." Wu Ju handed out all the compasses. Then, he turned into a beam of light and flew toward a certain direction in the Sea Sacrifice sect. All the disciples, deacons, and protectors of the sacrificial pavilion followed Wu Ju and flew to an island in the Sea Sacrifice sect. There were countless palaces on the island. Each palace had a teleportation formation that led to various places in the Shanghai Star Zone. As the largest force in the Shanghai Star Zone, the Sea Sacrifice sect had teleportation formations in every city in the Shanghai Star Zone. The disciples of the Sea Sacrifice sect could use these teleportation formations to go to various cities in the Shanghai Star Zone at any time. It was very convenient. Wu Ju led the group to the Broken Islands through the teleportation formation. The Broken Islands was one of the few places in the Shanghai Star Zone that had land, and there were tens of thousands of small islands. It was said that the Broken Archipelago was once a continent in the vast Sea Star region. Later, the aftermath of the battle between two celestial realm powerhouses shook the heavens and the earth. In the end, it was shattered into tens of thousands of small islands. Was the Shanghai Star Zone. Even in the Shanghai Starfield, which was mostly an ocean, islands like this were rare. Therefore, many races in the Shanghai Starfield cultivated on the Broken Islands. The countless foreign races also caused the Shattered Islands to become extremely chaotic, with crooks mixed in with honest folk. Wu Ju led all the disciples of the sacrificial pavilion to the sky above the Shattered Islands. All the disciples of the sacrificial pavilion spread out and transformed into streaks of light as they began to search for the Princess of the Sea. "You come with me." Chu Fengyan was about to leave, but was stopped by Wu Ju. Wu Ju seemed to be worried about Chu Fengyan. He wanted Chu Fengyan to follow him. "Yes," Chu Fengyan said calmly. It was as if he had really become a slave of the sacrificial pavilion. He followed Wu Ju. Wu Ju led Chu Fengyan to the center of the Broken Islands. They did not search the islands one by one. There was a huge storm in the center of the Broken Islands. It was said that there was a huge eye of the sea in the center of the storm. It attracted the power of heaven and earth and turned into a storm. It was said that the eye of the sea was the shock waves of the battle between two sky realm experts. It contained boundless power. Wu Ju led Chu Fengyan into the storm. Wu Ju seems to want to use me for something, Chu Fengyan thought as he followed Wu Ju. However, he did not resist. There were tens of thousands of islands in the Broken Islands. Even the disciples of the sacrificial pavilion would not be able to find the princess of the sea easily. Chu Fengyan followed Wu Ju. He wanted to see what Wu Ju was up to. The two of them closed in on the storm. This storm was 1,000 miles in diameter. As they got closer, they could feel the fierce winds within it. The power of these hurricanes was enough to be called wind blades. Ordinary ancient emperors would be slain by the wind blades the moment they entered the hurricane. Wu Ju stopped in front of the storm and pointed at Chu Fengyan. You go in front and block the wind blades. This doesn't seem to be Lord Lan Ming's order. Chu Fengyan frowned and looked at the wind blades. What? Are you going to go against my orders? Wu Ju glanced at Chu Fengyan with cold eyes and a sinister smile. Let me tell you, if I tell Lord Lan Ming that you are disloyal, you will die. How dare you go against my orders? Be obedient, and I can let you live for a few more days. If you don't, you will die now. You. Chu Fengyan's face was pale. He seemed to be hesitating. Finally, he obeyed Wu Ju. I am willing to be obedient. You can't kill me. Don't worry. I won't kill you as long as you are obedient. Wu Ju smiled when he saw Chu Fengyan's tactfulness. Go in. Chu Fengyan hesitated for a while. He took the lead and entered the storm. His spiritual energy turned into a shield to block the wind blades. Even for the ancient emperor, these wind blades were hard to defend against. Chu Fengyan opened up his barrier and was hit by dozens of wind blades in an instant. Don't stop. Go deeper. Wu Ju followed behind Chu Fengyan and urged him to move forward. Chu Fengyan could only listen to Wu Ju helplessly. He flew toward the center of the storm and helped Wu Ju block the wind blades along the way. Chu Fengyan's energy became weaker as he went deeper into the storm. Even Emperor Gu of the Nine Tribulations had to consume a large amount of spiritual energy to block the wind blades. Wu Ju wanted Chu Fengyan to walk in front, so that Chu Fengyan could block the wind blades for him. Chu Fengyan's face became paler. It seemed that he had consumed too much spiritual energy. It was difficult for him to block the wind blades. Of course, this was all an illusion. Chu Fengyan had the holy pulse. He could recover the spiritual energy used to block the wind blades in an instant. End of chapter. Chapter 1955. However, since Chu Fengyan wanted to disguise himself, he had to be thorough. Soon, Chu Fengyan had no choice but to swallow elixirs to replenish his spiritual power. After an hour, Chu Fengyan's spiritual power had been depleted to the point where even the elixirs couldn't replenish it. He could no longer resist the attacks of the wind blades. Lord Wu Ju, I can't hold on any longer. Chu Fengyan struggled to resist a few more wind blades and said weakly, according to the distance, we're almost there. Wu Ju glanced at the front and then looked at Chu Fengyan and said calmly, not bad. You're quite obedient. In that case, follow me obediently. Yes. Chu Fengyan felt as if he had been granted amnesty. He followed behind Wu Ju and slowly recovered his spiritual power. This person is obedient. Let's not kill him first. We'll kill him when we reach the cave mansion. Wu Ju glanced at Chu Fengyan with a trace of killing intent in his eyes. Although it was just a flash, Chu Fengyan still noticed it. Chu Fengyan knew that Wu Ju brought him to the center of the storm to do a secret thing. After it was done, Wu Ju wouldn't let him go. However, Wu Ju only brought Chu Fengyan here because he thought that Chu Fengyan was under the control of Lan Ming's restriction. However, Chu Fengyan wasn't under the control of Lan Ming's restriction at all. Chu Fengyan was now casting a long line to catch a big fish. He wanted to see why Wu Ju came to the center of the storm. Chu Fengyan looked exhausted as he followed Wu Ju to the center of the storm. The two of them had already passed through the storm. Chu Fengyan felt that the surrounding wind blades had decreased a lot. The scene in the storm in front of him gradually became clear. Chu Fengyan glanced over, and the scene in front of him was reflected in his eyes. Palaces, palaces after palaces. In the center of the storm, there were palaces. Many of these palaces were damaged. It seemed like they were destroyed by the wind blades. However, there were still some intact palaces standing there. Many of the palaces even had complete formations set up on them. At a glance, the center of the storm looked like the ruins of a sect. Come with me. Before Chu Fengmian could take a closer look, Wu Ju snorted coldly. Chu Fengmian hurriedly followed Wu Ju and landed in front of a palace. Chu Fengmian glanced at the palace and found that many of its restrictive formations had been unlocked. Moreover, they had been unlocked recently. It seemed that this palace was the purpose of Wu Ju's visit. You go in first and check out the situation inside. Wu Ju looked at Chu Fengmian and pointed at the palace. There won't be any danger, right? Chu Fengmian said fearfully. Just go. Don't waste your breath. If there's danger, I'll save you. Wu Ju snorted coldly. Why? Do you want to have a taste of the restrictive formations being activated? Hearing this, Chu Fengmian trembled. It seemed like he was extremely afraid of the restrictive formations being activated. He hurriedly walked into the palace. Seeing Chu Fengmian walk into the palace, Wu Ju sneered. Boom! As soon as Chu Fengmian stepped into the palace, the world suddenly began to spin. Countless flames began to burn and pounce on Chu Fengmian. Wu Ju, you didn't keep your promise. Chu Fengmian shouted loudly when he saw the flames. Promise? What promise? You're as stupid as a pig. Do you think you can leave here alive after I brought you here? This cave mansion is my opportunity. Do you think I'll let you live after I let you know? Wu Ju's cold voice sounded from all directions. I need a sacrifice to open this cave mansion. I don't know where to find it, but you've delivered yourself to me. Today, you'll be the sacrifice to open this cave mansion. Wu Ju said while chanting in ancient language. Although Chu Fengmian couldn't understand it, he could tell that it was an ancient sacrificial language. The Sea Sacrificial sect was famous for its sacrificial path. The blood sacrifice of living people was one of the most powerful sacrificial techniques. The more powerful the martial artist or demon god was, the greater the power of the blood sacrifice would be. Wu Ju had tricked Chu Fengmian into this palace in order to sacrifice Chu Fengmian. Then, he would use Chu Fengmian's power to break the restrictions of this palace. The flames around Chu Fengmian turned into golden sacrificial flames, as if they were going to burn Chu Fengmian to ashes. However, at this moment, a dragon's roar was heard. Spiritual energy trembled, and the surrounding sacrificial flames were extinguished. A figure suddenly flew out of the palace and grabbed Wu Ju, who was still trying to sacrifice. It was Chu Fengmian. You? What's going on? How could you possibly escape from my blood sacrifice technique? Wu Ju turned pale with fright when he saw Chu Fengmian break the sacrificial flames and rush out. In order to deal with Chu Fengmian, he deliberately wasted Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy and let him block the wind blades so that he could sacrifice Chu Fengmian. He didn't expect Chu Fengmian to destroy his sacrificial ritual in the blink of an eye. Chu Fengmian's aura was completely different from before. The strength Chu Fengmian showed in the Sea Sacrificial sect wasn't even 1% of Wu Ju's strength. Now that his true strength had erupted, Wu Ju suddenly felt that Chu Fengmian wasn't an ant to be trampled on, but a real dragon. Do you really think I'm a pushover? I'm just acting. I originally came to the Sea Sacrificial sect to deal with Lan Ming. I didn't want to kill anyone else. Unfortunately, you brought about your own destruction. Chu Fengmian laughed loudly, with killing intent in his eyes. The only person Chu Fengmian wanted to kill was Lan Ming. Chu Fengmian couldn't be bothered to kill the other disciples of the Sea Sacrificial sect. Unfortunately, Wu Ju had been targeting Chu Fengmian since he entered the Sea Sacrificial sect. Now that he wanted to sacrifice Chu Fengmian couldn't be blamed for killing him. You turned out to be a spy. How audacious. You actually want to kill Lord Lan Ming? Wu Ju shouted when he heard Chu Fengmian's arrogant words. Don't forget that you have Lord Lan Ming's restriction on you. If you dare to resist, I'll activate the restriction and you'll die in an instant. Do you think you can still resist Lord Lan Ming's restriction? In a chapter 1956. Restriction? How can such a small restriction do anything to me? Chu Fengmian laughed loudly. A cold smile appeared on his face as he looked at Wu Ju. Don't you like blood sacrifices? Well, I also want to see what's in this palace. I'll use your flesh as a sacrifice. As Chu Fengmian spoke, he grabbed the nobleman in the palm of his hand and used his spiritual power to suppress the nobleman. The nobleman didn't even have the slightest ability to resist before he was thrown into the palace. At the same time, Chu Fengmian was chanting an ancient sacrificial language. The Tao of sacrifice had a long history. In the most ancient times, humans hunted demonic beasts and other races to offer sacrifices in exchange for power. This kind of blood sacrifice was too barbaric and was very rare in this era. However, Chu Fengmian was familiar with ancient books and knew many ancient sacrificial techniques. Wu Ju intended to use Chu Fengmian as a blood sacrifice to open the palace. Today, Chu Fengmian would give him a taste of his own medicine and sacrifice Wu Ju. As Chu Fengmian chanted the sacrificial language, countless ancient characters appeared and fell around Wu Ju. They surrounded Wu Ju and extracted his power. His flesh and blood were burning little by little. Wu Ju screamed and tried to resist, but his power suddenly turned into a huge eye of the sea. The eye of the sea was the condensation of Wu Ju's power. It shook the surrounding characters violently, trying to escape from the palace. The power of the eye of the sea was so strong that even a half-step celestial being would have to retreat. It contained an enormous amount of power and swept away the sacrificial flames. Still want to resist? Chu Fengmian shouted and waved his hand. Suddenly, a dragon claw condensed in the air and slammed down on the eye of the sea. Bang! Wu Ju's eye of the sea, which was formed from his energy, was directly destroyed by the dragon claw. His energy was scattered, and he no longer had the ability to resist. As the sacrificial flames burned, the ocean eye formed by Wu Ju's body was incinerated. All that was left in the flames was an empty ring. Chu Fengmian waved his hand, and the empty ring fell into his palm. Inside this empty ring, in addition to the things in Chu Fengmian's empty ring, there was also Wu Ju's accumulation. Wu Ju's spatial ring also contained a dozen immortal stones, which were all taken away by Chu Fengmian. At the same time, the only thing left in the palace was Wu Ju's blood sacrifice. This was the power of sacrifice. Chu Fengmian tapped his palm and sent the mass of sacrificial power into the palace. Rumble! In the palace, the restrictive arrays were all shattered. Wu Ju's strength was more tyrannical than many half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon immortals. The blood sacrifice art was to unleash all the power he had accumulated throughout his life in an instant. The power that erupted was so great that even someone like Lan Ming would have to retreat. The moment it hit the palace, the few remaining restrictive arrays were all shattered. At this time, the power of Wu Ju's blood sacrifice technique was also exhausted. Many of the restrictive arrays above the palace had been set up by celestial realm experts. That was why they could withstand the attack of the wind blades in the storm. Chu Fengmian needed a long time to completely dissolve these restrictive arrays using the sky-devouring secret technique. Now, with the power of Wu Ju's blood sacrifice technique, the restrictive arrays of the palace were all shattered. The ancient door was also completely opened. Chu Fengmian stepped into the palace. There were no living creatures in the palace. There were only some skeletons lying on the ground. These skeletons didn't seem to have any injuries. However, when Chu Fengmian walked over, the ground trembled slightly. All the skeletons suddenly shattered and disappeared. These people were all killed by tyrannical force. Chu Fengmian glanced at these skeletons. There were probably many half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon immortals among them. However, these people were all killed by a tyrannical existence with a single move. They didn't even have the ability to resist. They were all killed. Moreover, the person who killed them had completely ignored the restrictive arrays above the palace. Chu Fengmian couldn't imagine how tyrannical the person was. This was definitely a celestial realm expert. It might even be a profound heaven realm expert who had surpassed the celestial realm. Thinking of the Broken Islands, which was once a continent that was destroyed by a battle between two super experts, Chu Fengmian was afraid that this person was the one who destroyed the Broken Islands. However, the record of the destruction of the Broken Islands was something that happened millions of years ago in the Songhai star field. Many things from that era had not been passed down. What was passed down was just a few words. No one could fully understand what had happened. Chu Fengmian glanced around the palace. In addition to these skeletons, there were dozens of large and small pill furnaces in the palace. Without exception, these pill furnaces were all half-immortal tools of high quality. It was because of their high quality that these pill furnaces were not destroyed. Only a few of them seemed to be unable to withstand the power of the bombardment and were shattered. The rest of them were still intact. Chu Fengmian could still feel the spiritual power on them, although it seemed that after millions of years, 99% of the spiritual power had been consumed. These pill furnaces only lost their owners. As long as there was a new owner to inject spiritual power into them, they could still display their previous power. This should be a pill concoction palace. These people are all disciples who were concocting pills in this pill concoction palace. However, they were all killed here. Chu Fengmian looked at the palace and sighed. These people probably didn't even know how they died. They were all killed without a sound. Half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon immortals, no matter which star region they were in, were considered experts and overlords. But now, these people in the palace didn't even know how they died, which made people sigh. Chu Fengmian looked at the palace for a while and walked towards the nearest intact pill furnace. About 1/3 of these pill furnaces were broken. There were a dozen pill furnaces that were intact and still had spiritual power. It seemed that they were not affected. Chu Fengmian beat them at their own game. He followed Wu Ju here and found such a palace by chance. He also wanted to see the harvest of this trip. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second to remember. Book Guest House mobile version. Chapter 1957. This was a palace that was in charge of refining pills. The best treasures were these elixir furnaces. These elixir furnaces were all half-immortal tools. They could be sold at sky-high prices. However, what Chu Fengmian cared about were these elixir furnaces. Wealth was just a number to him. Chu Fengmian had divine veins and could refine divine-grade spiritual stones. Now, as long as Chu Fengmian was willing, he could refine a large number of divine-grade spiritual stones in exchange for wealth. Although these elixir furnaces were priceless, they were nothing to Chu Fengmian. He walked towards one of the elixir furnaces with a face full of expectation. What Chu Fengmian was looking forward to the most was the things in the elixir furnaces. These elixir furnaces were not only used to refine elixirs, but also to store elixirs and prevent the medicinal efficacy from leaking out. Many of the ancient sacred elixirs that were discovered today were actually found in such elixir furnaces. These elixir furnaces were all half-immortal tools. The skeletons on the ground were all half-step celestial realm martial artists and demon gods. Judging from these 2 points, the elixirs refined in these elixir furnaces were absolutely extraordinary. They could even be ancient sacred elixirs. If these elixir furnaces were all filled with ancient sacred elixirs, Chu Fengmian would be rich. However, Chu Fengmian also knew that such a good thing was better to just think about it. Even in the ruins of an ancient sect, not many ancient sacred elixirs could be found. Moreover, these elixir furnaces had been around for millions of years. Even if there were elixirs in them, it was unknown how much medicinal efficacy the elixirs had left. Chu Fengmian walked to one of the elixir furnaces and injected a stream of spiritual energy into it. The elixir furnace was immediately under Chu Fengmian's control. The owners of these elixir furnaces had already passed away, so naturally, they would not resist. Chu Fengmian quickly took control of the elixir furnace. With a wave of his hand, the elixir furnace opened. A medicinal fragrance suddenly filled the air. The moment Chu Fengmian smelled the medicinal fragrance, his face was filled with joy. There were indeed elixirs in the elixir furnace. Moreover, judging from the medicinal fragrance, there were at least medieval sacred elixirs inside. It could even be ancient sacred elixirs. Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy enveloped the cauldron, sealing it so that the medicinal power of the pills wouldn't leak out. Then, Chu Fengmian looked down. The pills in this pill furnace were all white pills about the size of longans. Complex pill patterns were carved into them, and the medicinal power within them was extremely mild. It was as if any ordinary person could consume them. This is a human Tao pill. Chu Fengmian took a glance at it before he recognized the origin of the pills. The human Tao pill was a sacred pill of the Middle Ages. It was a pill that could raise one's potential. Its medicinal effects were extremely mild. Even ordinary people who had never cultivated before could consume it. These human Tao pills were said to be pills used by many sects in ancient times to nurture their disciples. Through the nurturing of these human Tao pills, even an ordinary disciple could become a genius. This kind of human Tao pill was very similar to the Xian Tao divine vein pill that Chu Fengmian had once obtained. They were both pills used to raise one's aptitude. However, the Xian Tao divine vein pill was a sacred pill of the primordial era. Its medicinal strength surpassed even the human Tao pill by a level. Of course, the difficulty of refining the Xian Tao divine vein pill was also incomparably high. Even in ancient times, many large sects didn't have the ability to refine them in large quantities. The Ocean's Word sect's Xian Tao divine vein pill was also a batch of Xian Tao divine vein pills that they had discovered in an ancient ruin. Otherwise, the Ocean's Word sect might not even have the qualifications to refine them with their current strength. Although the medicinal strength of these human Tao pills wasn't as good as the Xian Tao divine vein pill, they were much easier to refine than the Xian Tao divine vein pill. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw that there were 50 to 60 human Tao pills in the cauldron. This number was extremely shocking. These human Tao pills were useless to Chu Fengmian now, but when he returned to the Sword Tao sect, he could use them to create many genius disciples. There were a total of 57 human Tao pills in the cauldron. Chu Fengmian collected all of them into his spatial ring. At the same time, Chu Fengmian also collected the cauldron. This cauldron was a half-immortal tool. Chu Fengmian didn't plan to sell it. Instead, he collected it and gave it to the divine tree. The divine tree in Chu Fengmian's body had already devoured many supreme treasures. In the past, Chu Fengmian had obtained the sword cauldron, the archaic bronze gate, the gate of Dharma and Logos, the heavenly nine-dragon cauldron, and other supreme treasures. This divine tree was once a part of the Jimu. It was also a young Xiantian divine beast. It was also connected to Chu Fengmian's flesh and blood. Chu Fengmian had been nurturing it since he had the ability. However, the divine tree's power was getting stronger and stronger. Ordinary spiritual tools couldn't increase the divine tree's power, even if it devoured them. Even in its Shanghai star field, it wasn't easy to obtain a half-immortal tool. Therefore, the divine tree's power had stopped increasing recently. This time, there were so many cauldrons, all of which were half-immortal tools. It was just enough to feed the divine tree. When the divine tree saw the cauldron, it happily began to devour it. As a half-immortal tool, the cauldron couldn't resist the divine tree at all. It was instantly devoured by the divine tree. In an instant, Chu Fengmian felt the power in his body increase by a few points. The divine tree was connected to Chu Fengmian's flesh and blood. The stronger the divine tree was, the stronger Chu Fengmian's power would be. This cauldron didn't increase Chu Fengmian's power by much. However, there were more than a dozen of such cauldrons in the palace. The divine tree's power would increase greatly after devouring more than a dozen half-immortal tool cauldrons. Chu Fengmian threw some of the spiritual tools he had obtained on his way to the Shanghai star field into the divine tree for it to devour. On the other side, Chu Fengmian walked toward another cauldron and opened it. This cauldron was empty. It seemed that there were no pills stored in this cauldron. The pills stored in the cauldron could only be stored for a short period of time. In the long term, the pills would definitely be moved to other places. Chu Fengmian threw this cauldron into the divine tree and walked towards the next cauldron. There were some gains in the next cauldron. However, the pills inside were still human Tao pills. Compared to the first cauldron that Chu Fengmian opened, there were more than 100 human Dao pills. Chu Fengmian was delighted to see so many human Dao pills. However, he was also worried. Could it be that all the cauldrons in this palace were used to refine human Dao pills? If that was the case, then Chu Fengmian's gains would be limited. Human Dao pills were indeed good. However, they couldn't increase Chu Fengmian's power. First, set a small goal. For example, 1 second. Remember, book Guest House. Chapter 1958. To Chu Fengmian, increasing his own strength was of utmost importance. The Sword Dao sect was able to establish itself in the 9 domains because of Chu Fengmian's protection. Without Chu Fengmian, the Sword Dao sect would have been destroyed a long time ago. Chu Fengmian still hoped to obtain some pills that could increase his strength or even help him break through. That was the best opportunity for Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian opened a few more pill furnaces. The pills inside were all human Dao pills. This made Chu Fengmian feel a little disappointed. Chu Fengmian had already collected a total of 17 cauldrons in the palace, except for 3 cauldrons that didn't contain any pills. The remaining 14 pill furnaces all contained human Dao pills. Although the quantity was different, there were still more than 1,000 pills in total. Human Dao pills were sacred pills of the Middle Ages. 1,000 human Dao pills were enough to create 1,000 genius disciples. Even the Oceanic Sacrificial Sect, the #1 sect in the Shanghai Star Zone, didn't have so many human Dao pills. These 17 pill furnaces were all thrown into the divine tree by Chu Fengmian without exception. They were devoured and refined by the divine tree. The 17 pill furnaces were all half-immortal weapons. Although the materials used to refine these pill furnaces weren't as good as other spiritual weapons, there were a lot of them. After the divine tree devoured all 17 pill furnaces, the divine tree grew a lot taller, and its branches and leaves became a lot more lush. The numerous roots that took root in Chu Fengmian's body also became thicker. Although Chu Fengmian's cultivation level didn't increase, his strength and physical body had undergone significant changes. In terms of strength, he had increased by a full 30%. This time's harvest was a lot, but Chu Fengmian still didn't believe that there were only human Dao pills in this palace. His gaze landed on the last cauldron. Chu Fengmian had discovered the last alchemy furnace the moment he entered the palace. However, he had never opened it. He had kept it for the last time. The structure of this pill furnace was different from the others. Even though it had been there for an unknown amount of time, it still shone with a kind of luster as if it were brand new. The quality of this pill furnace far surpassed that of the other 17 pill furnaces. This pill furnace was also located in the center of the palace, surrounded by the other pill furnaces like stars surrounding the moon. The other pill furnaces were all used to refine human Dao pills. However, this one was probably different. Open. Chu Fengmian walked in front of the alchemy furnace and glanced at it. A wave of spiritual energy condensed in the palm of his hand, and he immediately struck the alchemy furnace to open it. However, countless restrictions and formations suddenly appeared above the pill furnace, resisting Chu Fengmian's strength and preventing him from opening it. This palace had been damaged for millions of years. At the very least, this cauldron had lost its owner after millions of years. Logically speaking, the power of this pill furnace should have been obliterated long ago. When Chu Fengmian had opened the other pill furnaces in this palace, he had been able to open them all with ease. But this time, Chu Fengmian was thwarted in the face of this pill furnace. Even with his strength, he couldn't forcibly open this pill furnace. The restrictions and formations on it were definitely set up by a celestial or even an absolute powerhouse in the celestial realm. After millions of years, much of its power had been depleted, but it was still enough to resist Chu Fengmian. I don't believe that an inanimate object can still have much power after millions of years. Sky-devouring secret technique. Devour. Chu Fengmian shouted coldly and pushed the power of the sky, devouring origin to the maximum. Immediately, the sky-devouring secret technique entered the pill furnace and madly devoured the power of the restrictions and formations. The restrictions and formations were extremely powerful. Chu Fengmian wanted to open them from the outside, but it was impossible. Therefore, Chu Fengmian devoured the restrictions and formations from the inside. Boom! As soon as the sky-devouring secret technique entered the pill furnace, it immediately operated madly and devoured the power of the restrictions and formations. The pill furnace was shaking madly, as if it was trying to resist the power of the sky-devouring secret technique. However, such a pill furnace was, after all, an inanimate object. After millions of years of silence, its power had been reduced to less than 1/10 of its original. Although it could resist some external forces, it had little ability to resist the sky-devouring secret technique. Boom! As the sky-devouring secret technique continued to operate and devour, the restrictions and formations on the pill furnace began to tremble and show signs of breaking at any time. Chu Fengmian could also see that the restrictions and formations on the pill furnace had also experienced millions of years, and the power inside had been obliterated. Crack! Under the continuous devouring of the sky-devouring secret technique, a crack suddenly appeared on the restrictions and formations covering the pill furnace. From the crack, an extremely pure medicinal fragrance suddenly spread out. The moment Chu Fengmian smelled the medicinal fragrance, he felt his body become incomparably comfortable. Just the medicinal fragrance contained in the pill furnace seemed to have some effect on Chu Fengmian. If this medicinal fragrance was stored and sold, it would be a priceless treasure for many Emperor Realm Masters and even half-step Celestial Realm Masters. Just the medicinal aroma alone had such an effect. Just how shocking was the medicinal pill inside? Ancient. The pills inside are definitely ancient saint pills. Chu Fengmian's eyes were burning. Only ancient saint pills could have such a medicinal fragrance. This also proved that the pills in the pill furnace were indeed not human path pills, but other pills. If an ancient saint pill was an ancient saint pill that could be used to improve one's realm, Chu Fengmian could directly choose to break through to the half-step celestial realm with the immortal stones he had accumulated and the flying immortal pills he refined. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian did not hesitate to increase the power of the sky-devouring secret technique and create a gap. The restrictions and formations on the pill furnace began to break and crumble. Chu Fengmian reached out and opened the pill box in the deepest part of the furnace. Inside was a yellow pill the size of a longan fruit. It had ancient pill markings on it and was reflected in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second to remember. Book Guest House Mobile Version. Chapter 1959. Even Chu Fengmian had never seen the runes on the pill before. They seemed to be some kind of language, but Chu Fengmian didn't know any of them. However, a familiar feeling appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind the moment he saw these words. Chu Fengmian couldn't figure out where this familiar feeling came from, so he simply stopped thinking about it. Chu Fengmian's gaze fell on the pill once more. When Chu Fengmian had opened a crack in the restriction formation earlier, he had thought that there would be at least one batch of pills inside the cauldron due to the pure medicinal fragrance. But now, there was only one. What kind of pill is this? How could an ancient sacred elixir have such pure medicinal power? This medicinal strength is much stronger than that profound Tao Divine Vein Dan, and its medicinal strength is 5 to 6 times stronger. Chu Fengmian stared at the pill in astonishment. The profound Divine Vein pill was an ancient sacred pill. Although it wasn't of a high grade among the ancient sacred pills, it was indeed an ancient sacred pill. However, the medicinal power contained within the pill before him was 5 to 6 times stronger than the profound Divine Vein pill. How could Chu Fengmian not be shocked? An elixir of this level was probably one of the top elixirs among the primordial sacred elixirs. However, Chu Fengmian was unable to determine what kind of medicinal pill it was. Even with his knowledge, he had never heard of such a medicinal pill. The Alchemy Kingdom's Grand Ceremony. Chu Fengmian frantically flipped through the Alchemy Kingdom's Grand Ceremony in his mind, searching for this pill. The Alchemy Kingdom's Grand Ceremony was the most comprehensive book in the world that recorded all kinds of pills. Although Chu Fengmian had only obtained a part of it, the number of pills recorded far exceeded his experience. Chu Fengmian spent more than 10 minutes flipping through the Alchemy Kingdom's grand ceremony before he finally found the origin of this pill. Primal Shaman Divine Pill? The origin of this pill isn't even recorded in the Alchemy Kingdom's grand ceremony. Chu Fengmian found the name of this pill in the Alchemy Kingdom's grand ceremony. However, the following introduction caused Chu Fengmian to frown. The Alchemy Kingdom's grand ceremony didn't record the origin of this pill. Whether it was the refinement method or the materials, there was no mention of who had refined it before. It was as if this pill was even more ancient than the Alchemy Kingdom of the past. The kingdom had only heard of it and had never actually seen it before. However, he did mention the efficacy of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill. The Primal Sorcerer God Pill was an ancient sacred pill that was used to refine one's body. Seeing this, Chu Fengmian's eyes lit up. An ancient sacred pill of the body, refinement Tao. Although to Chu Fengmian, it wasn't as good as the kind of medicinal pills that could help Chu Fengmian break through to the next realm. It was still very useful to him. Chu Fengmian had condensed his undying true body, and now he needed a saint pill of the body refining path to unleash the power of his body. Swallow. Chu Fengmian grabbed the Primal Sorcerer Divine Pill from the cauldron and swallowed it. In Chu Fengmian's body, he activated the sky-devouring secret technique and began to refine the medicinal efficacy of the Chaos Sorcerer God Pill. Bang! After being refined by the sky-devouring secret technique, the Primal Sorcerer God Pill immediately exploded in Chu Fengmian's body, turning into countless pure medicinal efficacy that poured into Chu Fengmian's body. In an instant, Chu Fengmian felt that every corner of his body was filled with the medicinal efficacy of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill. The medicinal efficacy was so strong that it almost pushed Chu Fengmian apart. The violent power instantly caused countless cracks to appear on Chu Fengmian's body, and it directly shattered. The 129,600 immortal crystals exploded. Each immortal crystal was filled with the power of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill. Chu Fengmian didn't expect the power of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill to be so overbearing. The overbearing power contained in the Primal Sorcerer God Pill was simply unbearable for a half-step celestial being expert, or even a true celestial being expert. If a celestial being expert swallowed the Primal Sorcerer God Pill, he would most likely be stuffed to death, and his body would explode. To those who couldn't bear the medicinal efficacy, the Primal Sorcerer God Pill was simply a kind of poison. It wasn't a divine pill at all, but a kind of poison pill. Even Chu Fengmian, who had condensed the immortal real body with the help of the divine tree and obtained countless opportunities to refine his body, couldn't bear the power of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill. In an instant, Chu Fengmian's body shattered and exploded. However, in the next moment, Chu Fengmian's power was also pushed to the extreme. His body was once again reconstructed and condensed, continuing to resist the medicinal efficacy of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill. The 129,600 immortal crystals instantly reconstructed and restored his body. The violent medicinal efficacy contained in the Primal Sorcerer God Pill tore Chu Fengmian's body again and again. After being torn apart, Chu Fengmian also reconstructed his body again and again. Even though the medicinal efficacy of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill tore Chu Fengmian's body apart, Chu Fengmian still reconstructed his body again and again. However, in the process of reconstruction, the medicinal efficacy of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill was gradually absorbed by the 129,600 immortal crystals in Chu Fengmian's body. The 129,600 immortal crystals became more and more full after devouring a large amount of medicinal efficacy of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill. In just a few breaths' time, Chu Fengmian once again reconstructed his body. The strength of his current body had more than doubled compared to before. This made Chu Fengmian extremely happy. The medicinal efficacy of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill was much more powerful than the Divine Elephant Dark Strength Pill. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. The effect of the Primal Sorcerer God Pill was at least equivalent to a dozen Divine Elephant Dark Strength pills. Such a primal sorcerer god pill was enough to make Chu Fengmian's immortal real body undergo earth-shaking changes. However, such benefits weren't available to just anyone. Chu Fengmian had already condensed the immortal real body. His immortal real body was supported by the divine tree, refined the divine elephant dark strength pill, obtained the six-winged centipede, hidden gold essence, and other opportunities. His immortal real body was extremely tough, but it almost couldn't withstand the power of the primal sorcerer god pill. To those who hadn't condensed the immortal real body, the primal sorcerer god pill was a type of deadly poison that couldn't be refined at all. A large amount of medicinal efficacy of the primal sorcerer god pill poured in and was devoured by the 129,600 immortal crystals. The 129,600 immortal crystals also underwent a transformation after devouring a large amount of medicinal efficacy of the primal sorcerer god pill. In a chapter 1960, this transformation was not only an accumulation of power, but also a qualitative change. Chu Fengmian also noticed that the immortal true body was not just a level or a realm. Chu Fengmian's immortal true body should only be at the first level. The opportunities Chu Fengmian had obtained before were all for the sake of accumulating power for his undying body. But this time, he was refining the wizard god pill. The overbearing efficacy of the wizard god pill seemed to be pushing the immortal true body to a higher level. The 129,600 immortal crystals were all changing. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw a few of the immortal crystals had actually begun to appear with ancient characters. The characters were so ancient that even Chu Fengmian could not recognize them. However, Chu Fengmian instantly realized that the words that appeared on the immortal crystal were extremely similar to the words on the primal wizard divine pellet. They seemed to be from the same language. What's going on? Could it be that swallowing this primal sorcerer god pill caused some changes to my immortal true body? Seeing the characters on the immortal crystals, Chu Fengmian panicked. He was afraid that his immortal true body was affected by the wizard god pill and changed. It would be fine if the changes were beneficial, but it would not be worth it if it affected Chu Fengmian's immortal true body. However, it was impossible for Chu Fengmian to stop at this moment. When the immortal crystals reached their peak after absorbing the primal sorcerer god pill's medicinal efficacy, they began to show the same changes, revealing the same unique characters. Of the 129,600 immortal crystals, half of them had already undergone such a transformation. It was impossible for Chu Fengmian to stop now, so he could only take one step at a time. But after observing for a while, Chu Fengmian relaxed. The characters on the immortal crystals were very similar to the ones on the wizard god pill, but they did not seem to be affected by external forces. They were naturally engraved on the immortal crystals. Is the wizard god pill a panacea to improve the immortal true body? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. The effect of the primal sorcerer god pill on the undying true body was far beyond Chu Fengmian's estimation. It was as if the pill was tailor-made for the undying true body. After all, the efficacy of the primal sorcerer divinity pill was too overbearing. Martial artists and demon immortals without immortal true bodies could not possibly withstand the efficacy of the primal sorcerer divinity pill. If the primordial sorcerer god pill was created to enhance one's immortal true body, then its overbearing medicinal efficacy made sense. After all, even if his immortal true body exploded, he could reconstruct his body again and again to withstand the medicinal efficacy of the primal sorcerer god pill. The medicinal efficacy of the primal sorcerer god pill had also reached its end. On the 129,600 immortal crystals, there were ancient words carved on them. When the 129,600 immortal crystals were engraved with these ancient characters, Chu Fengmian sensed that these immortal crystals seemed to have become array cores. The 129,600 immortal crystals were the 129,600 immortal crystals. Under the sudden activation, the strength of Chu Fengmian's body was rising steadily. Suddenly, All the immortal crystals gathered together and formed the shape of a little person. This little person was in Chu Fengmian's body. If one observed carefully, they would see that this little person looked exactly the same as Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian sensed that his immortal true body seemed to have undergone a metamorphosis and an upgrade to a higher level. Every metamorphosis was enough to upgrade his immortal true body to a higher level and contain more power. However, this time, the efficacy of the primal sorcerer god pill was completely devoured. The upgrade of his immortal true body also stopped. No matter how strong the efficacy of the primal sorcerer god pill was, it could only upgrade the immortal true body once. After that, the efficacy of the primal sorcerer god pill would be exhausted. Chu Fengmian's immortal true body seemed to have reached the second level. Of course, this wasn't his limit. Chu Fengmian could sense that his deathless true body could evolve further, but without enough medicinal pills and opportunities, it would be impossible for him to do so. It's a pity that I won't be able to find a second primal sorcerer god pill. Chu Fengmian shook his head and sighed. One primal sorcerer god pill could bring so many benefits to his immortal true body. If he could get a few more, his power would soar again. Unfortunately, these pills weren't easy to come by. Chu Fengmian had found a primordial sorcerer god pill within the pill furnace. Even the Alchemy Kingdom's grand ceremony had very few records of this pill, so one could imagine its rarity. Being able to obtain this pill to help Chu Fengmian's immortal true body evolve once was already a great fortune. There's nothing else worth exploring in this palace. In the palace, Chu Fengmian fed the last cauldron to the divine tree, which then devoured and refined it. Chu Fengmian's figure stepped out of the palace and flew towards the edge of the storm. Let's see what level my physical body has reached. Chu Fengmian took a step forward. Immediately, countless wind blades bombarded him from all directions. Chu Fengmian didn't use any spirit energy to block these wind blades. Instead, he used his physical body to block them. The wind blades collided with Chu Fengmian's body, but they couldn't break his body at all. They could only leave bloody scars. However, Chu Fengmian still frowned after seeing these scars. The benefits from the advancement of his physical body seemed to be much less than what Chu Fengmian had imagined. His fleshly body had only improved by 50% at most. This didn't seem like the effect of an immortal true body at all. No, Chu Fengmian shook his head. His body shattered and reformed as he rushed into the wind blades again. However, the result was exactly the same. These wind blades could only leave bloody scars on Chu Fengmian's body. There was no change from before. How is this possible? My undying body has risen to the next level, but it's only increased by 50%? Chu Fengmian frowned as he recalled the situation when his immortal true body first evolved. Set a small goal first, such as 1 second to remember. Book Guest House Mobile Edition. Chapter 1961. Every upgrade of the immortal true body was as difficult as the celestial tribulation for ordinary warriors and demon immortals. Chu Fengmian's immortal true body had undergone countless preparations and accumulations. Hidden gold essence, six-winged centipede queen, divine elephant dark strength elixir, and countless other sacred body-refining elixirs had been integrated into the immortal true body to increase its power. Chu Fengmian had obtained a chaos sorcerer god elixir under such accumulation, and only then did he truly upgrade his immortal true body. He had paid such a high price and only got such a small benefit. Chu Fengmian couldn't accept it. What's going on? Even if my immortal true body didn't upgrade, the chaos sorcerer god elixir should have improved my immortal true body more than this. Chu Fengmian frowned and suddenly looked at the little man formed by 129,600 immortal crystals in his body. The biggest change for Chu Fengmian after the upgrade of his immortal true body was the little man formed by 129,600 immortal crystals. Is it because of him? Has the power of the chaos sorcerer god elixir been swallowed by this little man? Chu Fengmian thought while injecting a stream of spiritual power into the little man, secretly operating its power. Suddenly, The little man shattered with the influx of Chu Fengyan's power. The next moment, 129,600 immortal crystals suddenly wrapped around Chu Fengyan's body. Chu Fengyan's eyes flickered when he saw this. He took a step forward and faced the wind blades again. But this time, the wind blades couldn't leave a single mark on Chu Fengyan's body when they bombarded him. These wind blades, which even half-step celestial realm warriors and demon immortals had to use their spiritual power to resist, couldn't hurt Chu Fengyan's body at all. It should be noted that Chu Fengyan didn't mobilize his spiritual power to resist at all. He could completely ignore the attack of the wind blades with his physical strength alone. If Chu Fengyan mobilized his spiritual power to resist, coupled with the strength of his physical body, he could resist the attack of a half-step celestial realm warrior or even a celestial realm warrior. The moment these 129,600 immortal crystals fused into Chu Fengyan's body, Chu Fengyan's fleshly body's toughness increased countless times. This is the effect of the transformation of the undying true body. Chu Fengyan was delighted. However, before Chu Fengyan could activate it again, he felt that his power was empty. This fusion only lasted for about 3 breaths of time. The 129,600 immortal crystals returned to Chu Fengyan's body and turned back into the miniature figure. Such a fusion seemed to consume a large amount of energy at every moment. With Chu Fengyan's current strength, he could only maintain it for 3 breaths of time. After 3 breaths of time, it would be gone. However, 3 breaths of time of fusion was already a great harvest for Chu Fengyan. When the immortal crystal humanoid with 129,600 immortal crystals fused into Chu Fengyan's body, Chu Fengyan felt that his body had been strengthened by 10 times. Even the attacks of those in the celestial realm were enough to withstand him. Although it was only for 3 breaths of time, if it was used at a critical moment, it could have an unexpected effect. Moreover, this was only the effect of the transformation of the undying true body. If the undying true body was further enhanced, or even further enhanced, the power of the undying true body would be even more terrifying. If Chu Fengyan could maintain this state at all times, he could contend against those in the celestial realm with just his physical body without using any spiritual power. It was no wonder that the undying true body was known as the toughest body in the world. After the completion of the undying true body, it was enough to contend against those in the celestial realm. Even if Chu Fengyan could only maintain it for about 3 breaths of time, it was enough to help Chu Fengyan resolve many dangers. I didn't expect to gain so much by following Wu Ju here. Chu Fengyan was delighted. He followed Wu Ju here just to see what Wu Ju was up to. He didn't expect Chu Fengyan to discover such a palace. The 17 half-immortal pill furnaces in the palace were already a great opportunity. After being devoured by the divine tree, Chu Fengyan's strength increased by about 50%, in addition to the transformation of the undying true body. Although there was no change in Chu Fengyan's realm, his real strength had more than doubled compared to before. When facing those in the celestial realm, he was no longer powerless to resist. Moreover, in addition to the breakthrough of the undying true body, Chu Fengyan also obtained a large number of human Dao pills. There were a total of 1,000 human Dao pills, which was also a great opportunity. There are other opportunities in the center of the storm, but I can't rashly go in now. Chu Fengyan walked out of the palace and looked deeper into the storm. In the storm, there should be the remains of an ancient sect. Other than this palace, there should be other opportunities. However, when Chu Fengyan looked at the center of the storm, he felt uneasy. The center of the storm was full of danger. Chu Fengyan didn't have any understanding of the situation in the storm. If he rashly went in now, it would be extremely dangerous for him. Moreover, he didn't have time to waste in the palace. Although the broken islands were huge, with tens of thousands of islands, there were hundreds of disciples from the sacrificial pavilion who came to search for the Princess of the Sea. These hundreds of people would probably find the Princess of the Sea in a few days. Chu Fengyan had to find the Princess of the Sea before them. Let's go. Chu Fengyan's figure flickered and suddenly flew out of the storm. His escape light was extremely fast. Chu Fengyan didn't need to resist the wind blades at all. These wind blades bombarded Chu Fengyan's body, but they couldn't cause any damage to Chu Fengyan. After leaving the storm, his figure suddenly disappeared and flew towards an island in the Broken Archipelago. The island that Chu Fengyan was heading to was called Hula Island. It was an inconspicuous island in the Broken Islands. However, according to the jade talisman that the Princess of the Sea gave to Chu Fengyan, the Princess of the Sea was currently on Hula Island. End of chapter. Chapter 1962. Hula Island. Although it was only a small island among the Broken Islands, it had a population of 10 million and many cities have been built there. Chu Fengyan arrived at Hula Island and released the aura of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. At the same time, the power of the dragon whale bloodline was unleashed. The martial artists and demon gods who wanted to rob Chu Fengyan retreated when they sensed the aura of Chu Fengyan. The Broken Islands were extremely chaotic. If one was not strong enough, it was normal to be robbed in the Broken Islands. However, once Chu Fengyan released the aura of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu, the martial artists and demon gods who wanted to rob Chu Fengyan all retreated. There were not many Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu in the Broken Islands. Any Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu was an overlord. Not many people dared to offend them. Even if these people were not afraid of Chu Fengyan's power, they still gave up on the thought when they saw Chu Fengyan's clothes. Chu Fengyan's clothes were the clothes of a protector of the Sea Sacrifice sect. The Sea Sacrifice sect was the most powerful force in the vast Sea Star Zone. Not many people dared to offend a disciple of the Sea Sacrifice sect, let alone a protector. Chu Fengyan swaggered into the city, and no one dared to stop him. Chu Fengyan looked towards the west of the city. The jade talisman that the Princess of the Sea gave to Chu Fengyan indicated her location. At this moment, a few streaks of light descended from the sky and landed in the direction that Chu Fengyan was looking at. Chu Fengyan recognized them with a single glance. They were the disciples of the sacrificial pavilion, and the person in the lead was a guardian of the sacrificial pavilion. These people had sensed the presence of the Princess of the Sea and went after her. Soon, two streaks of light flew out from the city lord's residence. These two streaks of light were the Princess of the Sea and Qi Yangshi. After not seeing Chu Fengyan for a while, the Princess of the Sea had reached the peak of the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. Her aura was many times stronger than when she had parted ways with Chu Fengyan. Chu Fengyan could tell at a glance that the black whale bloodline in the Princess of the Sea was slowly awakening. The black whale bloodline was an innate divine beast bloodline. Once it was awakened, the Princess of the Sea's strength would increase tremendously. However, due to the awakening of the black whale bloodline in the Princess of the Sea, her identity could no longer be concealed, and she was discovered by the disciples of the Sacrificial Pavilion. The disciples of the Sacrificial Pavilion also chased after them. There were 7 or 8 people in the group, and the leader of the group was a protector whose strength was not inferior to a half-step celestial being expert. The Princess of the Sea and Qi Yangshi could only flee in panic. There's no need to escape. Our Sacrificial Pavilion's people are everywhere on the Broken Islands. You'd better stop struggling. As the disciples of the Sacrificial Pavilion chased after him, they suddenly unleashed a burst of spiritual power, activating a large formation that enveloped Hula Island. This large array sealed the entire Hula Island. No one inside could leave the island. Of course, it was impossible to set up such a huge array in a short period of time. Apparently, the disciples of the Sacrificial Pavilion had been prepared and had set up the array. The Princess of the Sea and Qi Yangshi were trapped by the array, and they were soon surrounded by the disciples of the Sacrificial Pavilion. Miss Ling, hurry up and leave. I'll hold them back. Qi Yangshi's expression changed when he saw that the two of them were surrounded by the disciples of the Sacrificial Pavilion. Leave? Both of you can forget about leaving today. Although Lord Lan Ming has said that he only wants one of you, I'll capture you as well. I'm sure Lord Lan Ming will reward me. The protector of the Sacrificial Pavilion said with a hideous smile. Let's capture them alive and bring them back to the sacrificial pavilion. Swoosh! The other disciples of the sacrificial pavilion obeyed the protector's order and struck together. Surges of spiritual power condensed into threads and weaved into a net that immediately enveloped the princess of the sea and Qi Yangshu. The net of spiritual power was a kind of suppression technique. With the disciples of the sacrificial pavilion working together, even a half-step celestial human realm martial artist or demon god would not be able to escape. The 17 half-immortal pill furnaces in the palace were already a great opportunity. After being devoured by the divine tree, Chu Fengmian's strength had increased by 50%, in addition to the transformation of his immortal true body. Although there was no change in Chu Fengmian's realm, his true strength had more than doubled compared to before. When facing a celestial human realm expert, he would no longer be defenseless. Moreover, other than the chaotic sorcerer god elixir that helped Chu Fengmian to upgrade his immortal true body, he had also obtained a large number of human Dao elixirs. There were a total of 1,000 human Dao elixirs, which was also a great opportunity. There are other opportunities in the center of the storm, but I can't go in recklessly now. Chu Fengmian walked out of the palace and looked into the depths of the storm. Within the storm, there should be the remains of an ancient sect. Other than this palace, there should be other opportunities. However, when Chu Fengmian looked at the center of the storm, he felt a little uneasy. The center of the storm was full of danger. Chu Fengmian had no understanding of the situation within the storm. If he went in recklessly, it would be extremely dangerous for him. Moreover, there was no time to waste in the palace. Although the broken archipelago was huge with tens of thousands of islands, there were hundreds of disciples of the sacrificial pavilion who came to search for the princess of the sea. These hundreds of people would be able to find the princess of the sea in a few days' time. Chu Fengmian had to find the princess of the sea before them. Let's go. Chu Fengmian's figure flickered and suddenly flew out of the storm. His escape light was extremely fast. Chu Fengmian didn't need to resist the wind blades at all. These wind blades bombarded Chu Fengmian's body, but they couldn't cause any damage to Chu Fengmian. After he left the storm, he suddenly concealed his figure and flew towards an island in the broken archipelago. The island that Chu Fengmian was heading to was called Hula Island. It was an inconspicuous island in the broken archipelago. However, according to the jade talisman that the princess of the sea gave to Chu Fengmian, the princess of the sea was now on Hula Island. He had followed Wu Ju here to see what Wu Ju was up to. He did not expect Chu Fengmian to discover such a palace. End of chapter. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.